5 o'clock, I want to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, please do the roll call. Everyone needs to take the seat, please. Otherwise, the fire marshal will come give me nasty letters. So please take a seat. And since most of you are firemen, you know what will happen.
Ms. Osiander? Mr. Gutierrez?
Present.
Mr. Honeman?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Stark?
Here.
Mr. Flynn? Present. Mr. Trainey?
Here.
Ms. Johnston? Here. Ms. Gray-Jackson?
Honored to be here.
Mr. Birch?
Here.
Ms. Drummond? Here. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item is pledge of allegiance. And Madam Clerk, would you please lead us? Remember before it went down when you were here. Next item of business is minutes of previous meetings. We have two. The first one is June 22nd, 2010.
Second.
Any discussion? Ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, those minutes are approved. Next one is a regular meeting of July 13th. If I get a motion, please.
Moved to second.
Moved in second. Is there any objection to this item? Seeing none, the item is approved unanimously, Madam Clerk. Next item is Mayor's report. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple quick things. Tomorrow is the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation Investors Lunch. I will be speaking very briefly at that. We've got a nationally renowned speaker in town, Joel Kotkin. Some Assembly members attended a briefing session with him this afternoon, and we look forward to hearing him. And then, of course, the air show is this weekend. And I hope everybody will get out there and support our military and attend both. There's shows both Saturday and Sunday, and would encourage everyone to go support the troops. And that's it for today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions from the mayor from the body? Doesn't appear to be. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
One, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Ms. Osiander.
In our packet, we got a document that I was very interested in about this trial program of Project PACE, where we're going to be looking at more closely at some folks who are on probation. I thought that was pretty exciting. I hadn't heard anything about it. I'm hoping you'll give us some feedback. And I don't know, is our Public Safety Committee aware of this? Paul, have you seen the project?
I've not read through the full packet. I did see it, and I did hear the announcement through where the chief actually was there and discussing it.
Okay. Last Wednesday at our regular press briefing, the chief and other officials announced Commissioner Schmidt from the Department of Corrections announced this program. Media carried it pretty well, and it's modeled after a Hawaii program that's been very successful. So we're going to start small, see if it works, and if it does, we'll go bigger.
Well, I think the packet's really interesting. If everybody hasn't had a chance to look at it, I'm hoping we get some feedback on how it's going as you know more. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're now down to Assembly Chair's report. And Rhonda, I'm told by lots of flyers around here that this is your last meeting.
Oh, no. I didn't know.
Mr. Chair, that may not be the truth. I am at the beck and call of the municipal attorney, and I suspect that I will be at additional meetings in the next couple months.
Okay, that doesn't mean you're going to be here. This note may be valid. I just wanted to say how much we've appreciated working with you. And thank you very much for putting up with us, because I know we're a hard act to deal with on some days. But thank you, Rhonda. You've always given us good advice, and we appreciate it.
I wouldn't trade it for anything, Mr. Trainey.
Thank you, ma'am. Anything else from Assembly members for Rhonda? Pat?
Mr. Chairman, move to change the order of the day to move down the agenda to item 15, special orders.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Ask unanimous consent. There's no objection. That's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move that we take up the mayor's veto of ordinance 2011- I believe it's 44S1.
Yes, 2010 44S1.
2010 44S1. And I need a second, please. Got it. Okay. And with that, Mr. Chairman, once you've passed those out, we can take up debate. I see the mayor's in the queue. Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to begin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the votes are probably there to override the veto, but I just want people to know that one of the things that we've been working on, and we don't have a finished product yet, is we are rewriting the policy and procedure that will guide how municipal resources and personnel can be used and what is considered to be, legitimate municipal purposes and what aren't. And some of the things that have been mentioned as maybe being prohibited, such as participating in helping the Fur Rendezvous or Dollars for Dogs, those won't be prohibited. Those serve a community purpose that benefit, the overall community, the community as a whole. And there's any number of examples like that. So what we're working on is really drawing up the policy and procedures that create that kind of bright line test that distinguish from when the use of resources and personnel creates a benefit for a private entity exclusively as compared to a community benefit. And I think the members really will find it to be a good policy and procedure, and it really is based on further defining the ethics law that we passed in 2007. I'm always, I guess, a little bit concerned when we amend a law like the 2007 ethics law in a fairly short period of time, including wordsmithing on the day of the passage, when that particular ordinance took several years to craft. The Board of Ethics worked on it for a couple of years, got to a point where they turned it over to the Assembly, and then we worked on it for a good year as well. So it was a well thought out, well crafted document. And so I always have concerns when amendments of convenience are made, especially ones that might turn it into special interest legislation rather than good, broad policy legislation. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Ostiander?
Mr. Chairman, don't we need a motion on the floor? I wanted to speak to the point of...
We have a motion on the floor to override the veto.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Then I do want to speak to it.
Please do.
This last week I've had many, many conversations with folks and have been able to connect with some people with military who deal with ethics ordinances, and I've looked a little bit more at what some other cities do. And I would really urge us to not be in a big rush here to try to deal with this simply because a specific event is coming up. And in particular, I've really gotten a lot out of reading the federal ethics regulations that have fairly broad guidelines. And it seems to me the best way to deal with this is in a broad brush method that lets us say, in general, this is what we think is appropriate, this is what we think is not appropriate. I continue to fear the same thing that I stated the last time this came to us. I think it's a slippery slope when we are in a position where we say, this particular event is okay, that particular event is not okay. I don't think that's a wise way to go. And I want to emphasize to you that I have seen no other ethics ordinances in the last week, and I've been looking, that are patterned that way. Instead, they have broad guidelines, and then the administration uses the guidelines to figure if the particular event fits in or not. That is not what this ordinance does, and I would hope that we don't go down this path. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ostiander. Mr. Traney.
Thank you. Julia, the 2006 ordinance, which was the ethics ordinance, which was authored by Mr. Stout solely, that was the big ethics ordinance. Is that correct, ma'am? And you wrote it with him.
To the Chair, 2007.
2006.
It was passed in
You what?
Right, we call it the 2007 ordinance.
I know.
Okay.
I saw it, but it was 55 pages. I think Mr. Stout's name was the only name on it.
Yes, sir.
Then there was a small revision done that mainly dealt with housekeeping in 2007, the next one after it. I think that was the one the mayor joined in on with Mr. Stout, too, because I think there were two people on that one, if I remember correctly. Is that correct, Julia?
Mr. Chair, yes, there was a dovetailing of the lobbyist regulations to the ethics code and an amendment to add remedies before the ethics board.
Okay.
Could I respond, sir?
No, it went, well, let me talk to Julia for a second, Deb. I know your memory is better than mine is.
I was on the board, on assembly then.
I know, so was I.
Okay.
Isn't that odd when we get old enough and there's three of us here that were on the body at that time? Well, there's you, me, and the mayor who can vote, votes on some issues. Anyway, Julia, that thing went from 5 pages before the Stout ordinance to what, 55 pages? But we determined what was to be sent to Ethics Board and what's not to be sent to the Ethics Board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Ostiander?
No, I just wanted to respond to his questions, but he apparently didn't need it, so
Okay.
never mind.
Thank you very much. Mr. Craney, was there anything further?
Just that I intend to vote to override this because, quite frankly, this MDA Fill the Boot's been going on across this country for 20-plus years, done in hundreds of cities across this country, and it raises money for something we desperately need. And I'm more than happy to pass this and once again to help fill the boot, because what this money goes for, I think we need to have. And I've talked to a lot of organizations like I got a call from the police department that were concerned that they can't take the police dog out anymore to go to civics groups to raise money for police dogs if we don't deal with this particular ordinance. So I want to deal with this tonight.
Thank you, Mr.
And we
Craney.
still need a policy procedure manager, which then the mayor will have to write to deal with it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Craney. Mr. Birch, and then I'll yield the gavel back to Mr. Craney.
I will not be supporting an override in this case. I think we had, have had a clear indication of the, certainly the safety issues involved in this effort. I think we had a letter, if I recall, from the State Department of Transportation dated earlier this year, and it identified that it's just not allowable on state right-of-ways, state-maintained roads in our city to have this type of activity. Aside from the fact that you're basically aligning municipal assets and resources towards the benefit of a specific charitable event, regardless of how worthy. So I think we have a mechanism in place for charitable support in the community. It's generally through the United Way, and I think this is really it's kind of a Band-Aid approach here, and I would urge supporting the mayor on this and voting against an override. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
I'm going to be asking and voting for in support of overriding this veto, and for many reasons. And first of all, I just make a couple of comments, and that is the Fill the Boot, which is one of the catalysts behind this ordinance change, has been in effect partnered with the IAFF International since 1954, and that's a lot more years than 20. In this community since 1981, the local 1981, we've been doing this here. We've got many other organizations that benefit from municipal employees groups, and one of the ways people keep saying United Way, and it's really not a United Way campaign, it's municipal employee fundraising campaign. We use a checkoff from your paycheck for municipal employees. I've did so proudly for many years. I campaigned this, I shared this campaign for a year, and I shared it at the department for many years as well. There are some United Way benefactor agencies. There are Alaska Community Share benefactors. And surprising to note that some charitable organizations are on that list and some are not. They do not make, I could not donate to Dollars for Dogs from my paycheck through the MEFC, even though they are a nonprofit, viable, and are listed with United Way as a charitable organization. So some clarification to be said. The mayor's charity ball, in fact, not all charitable organizations that want and desire to benefit from that charity ball are included. Some are excluded. It's a drawing, and so you can set and say all the justifications you want that some do and some don't, and that's what's been going on without challenge, without issues, and without problem. I talked with the State Department of Transportation, and on the state roadways, they make exceptions for special events. They have included Fill the Boot as a special event. In fact, last year, if you look on the newspaper, the governor himself was out there with firemen on a street corner doing the Fill the Boot. So the state roadway issue is, again, a red herring. There's no problem there using the state roadways, and that's been clarified and verified. So those are my comments, and I'm going to urge a vote to override.
Ms. Johnston.
Actually, I've got a couple of questions. One is, I think the mayor's charity ball is put on by a nonprofit.
Exactly.
It's not, but it's not with municipal.
Absolutely. When I was at the police department, I was selling tickets to that on duty time, by the way, on behalf of the mayor's charity ball from the mayor's office.
Jennifer, a question for Paul or for somebody else?
Well, I was actually asking the administration.
Through the chair.
Muzzle it. Thank you.
Is the mayor's charity ball put on by anybody within the municipality?
No, there's no on-duty personnel involved in the charity ball.
My next question is, my concern is somewhat along the same line as Ms. Osiander as far as how we address this situation. And I sat in a room with a couple of lawyers, and it was really the last sentence in this amendment that has concerned me, where it's duly authorized by the Assembly or in writing by the mayor or the mayor's designee. And I understood that isn't. I've had 2 or 3 different interpretations of that, and I wondered if Ms. Westover had a concern, or if you could help me with that.
Through the chair, Ms. Johnson, my concern is that if it takes several lawyers to explain what it is that it means, that it's not clear enough for the people that are actually reading the code. And to me, the phrase is not clear. I think it could be stated in a way that made it clear for everybody that was looking at it.
Thank you. For that reason, I'm going to be not voting to override the veto. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to thank the mayor for giving me a heads up, because I think he said that we probably have enough votes to override. That's really great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I also want to thank my colleagues, the 8 of them, that's needed to override this veto, because I simply think it's the right thing to do. I brought this forward for all the right reasons. You know, the mayor's, one of his issues was the fact that it's against the ethics code. Well, this ordinance clears that up, because it brings it totally out of the jurisdiction of the ethics code. Now, granted, there needs to be a policy in place, and I really believe that that's going to happen. But when I think about all the phone calls and emails that I'm sure not just I received, 99% of them wanted to see the Fill the Food program continue. 99% within this community. You know, there were a couple of concerns about the cost of taxpayers, and I simply don't see that, because these firefighters are out there on duty, raising money for needy people in this community. If they were at the fire station, they'd still be on duty, except they're out raising money, half-dressed, trucks are there. Quite frankly, they can get to a fire quicker doing the MDA Fill the Boot program than at a fire station. So there really is no cost to the taxpayer, folks. There is none. Zero. There was an issue about insurance, and I found out, and correct me if I'm wrong, that MDA covers the insurance for not only the firefighters, but also for the municipality, and their insurance is above and beyond the required limit. And I also heard recently that some high-level officials at the state don't have any issue with this at all. So with that said, I am honored to be overriding the mayor's veto, and I look forward to probably hanging out there for at least 15 minutes during this event this year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Before I go to Mike, I just remind the body, this is not the Assembly versus the mayor. This is a single issue. We deal with this issue, and then we move on to the next issue.
Absolutely.
Because we're going to do this a lot of times the next few years. Please don't take any of this personal, either way. Because we vote many times together, and then the next time we vote on an issue, we're exactly opposite from them. So don't get too wrapped up in it. It's just one issue in front of us. Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't beat a dead horse, I guess, too much. I think the reason, I want to explain the reasons that I am going to support and vote to override the veto is because I think there are a great many unintended consequences that have not been considered. As in 2008, as a newly minted elected official, one of the things I learned very quickly is that everything this body does and everything the executive does has unintended consequences. Not all of them are negative, mind you, but everything we do has consequences we didn't consider, because none of us up here, with all due respect to my colleagues, nobody up here is a genius, myself included. all right? I think we're a body of 11 pretty smart people, but everything we do has unintended consequences. And I worry about setting a double standard. If we hold one organization to one standard and yet say, oh, but don't worry, Iditarod, the municipal assistance that you get with street maintenance and snow removal, yada, 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 that's fine. We'll keep that in place. Or for Rendezvous, or Bear Paw, or any of, or Dollars for Dogs, which is another one that came up. All of these are fantastic organizations and events. I worry if we set that double standard that is indeed the slippery slope that Ms. Osiander mentioned that's going to get us in trouble. Now, Ms. Osiander also mentioned to me that she's working on another ordinance that she thinks can resolve this, and I would greatly welcome that, to see that. I'm quite saddened that this body has had to spend this much time on something that's never been an issue before. But we have, and we will continue to. But, Ms. Osiander, if you can come up with a fix to this, I will love you for it. But that's where we are. And I think to avoid that slippery slope, to avoid the sort of double standard and the potential consequences of that, I think the veto needs to be overridden. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
By the way, before I go to Ms. Osiander, it has nothing to do with you, Debbie. I did have dinner brought in tonight. Because remember, you got the notice there wasn't going to be dinner tonight because we're going to get done in a hurry? Dinner's coming tonight, okay? It's pizza, but it's coming. Anyway, Debbie, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to share with you, already I shared that I've been doing some research with other states and other jurisdictions on ethics code. But also I wanted to share some of the conversations I had. I talked to a couple people who are affiliated with other nonprofits who say they view it as unfair that this one particular nonprofit gets uniformed firefighters to actually collect funding, and they didn't have the opportunity to try for that. I didn't have an answer, but I think it's some question that should be considered. The other thing I think that needs emphasizing, somebody came up to me and said, well, okay, you've got the firefighters out there. Are you going to allow the police to go out there and collect money too? And what will the reaction to that be? I don't have an answer for that either. But it emphasizes, I think, how important it is to have a uniform, fair standard that everybody can look at and know what the rules are. And folks, this isn't it. Thanks.
Mr. Starr, sir?
Well, I'm going to vote to override the veto, and I've done it through a lot of different soul-searching and really what I think is the best for our community first. We haven't done good government here in any form or another. We haven't done it through the need to veto previous policy statements from the Assembly, through the Mayor's perspective. It's not to challenge him, nor to put it otherwise, but there is sort of an institutional type of attitude that arises from this Fill the Boot campaign, which I really recommend. We really soul-search ourselves from what we are as a community. To see the firemen out there, rallying that, the honking, the pushing on, yeah, there could be that risk for injury, but no different than our snow plowers at night in a blizzard or some other city employee at risk serving that. I don't think that it's going to be a misused policy, this fear that we have to bring it forth and we can't judge for ourselves. I'm happy to talk about any organizational group at the city that wants to put themselves out. If that has to come in front of the Assembly, okay, we'll be done by 8 o'clock tonight. Bring it on. I'll talk all night on charitable contributions that make our city whole. And I think we have a morale issue that we would have at a greater extent if we didn't support some of our employee wishes. And I speak to the employees of the fire department much as I do the employees of the rest of the community. I've run businesses before, and I always marveled when my employee groups came together on the clock or off the clock. To me, that's not a misuse of municipal resources. If it's done within a good, clear policy statement, we've been assured by the mayor just tonight that a policy statement's forthcoming. That's good departmental leadership. That's what the administration is supposed to do. We set policy. I'm going to err on the side of the firemen, and I believe that if there's other challenges that come forth with that, I'll be ready to deal with those as well. So there's my vote. It stands, and I'm happy to do it tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Flynn.
We just look alike, Mr.
I know
Chairman.
what to tell you.
Mr.
I was thinking about somebody else and calling you.
Chairman, this is an interesting discussion because, as Ms. Osiander points out, the ordinance before us perhaps isn't as well written as it could be. It could perhaps be better. I think if there's a responsibility to be borne there, part of it should be by the administration, who sat with us in 2 different work sessions and pledged to work with us on appropriate language. Complaints about wordsmithing are somewhat specious, given that it was the administration wordsmithing to the very end. But the real base of the problem here is that rather than using the Ethics Code as a shield to protect the citizenry from irresponsible, inappropriate behavior by government employees, it's instead been employed as a sword by politicians to attack a program they don't like. That's abuse of the Ethics Code. It's inappropriate. And unfortunately, the only answer we have before us tonight is to override this veto. And if we need to revisit the issue, we will. But really, we've been wasting time now for months, and it looks like we're going to have to waste time further. Mr. Chairman, I'm concluded.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a final
Thank you,
comment.
Mayor.
I reject the notion that anything done by the administration in regards to maintaining a good, fair, broad ethics code was a sword. You know, it was this administration that brought forth the ordinance that allowed solicitation in the right-of-ways, which prior to us bringing that forward to the Assembly, no Assembly person brought it forward. It was illegal to solicit in the right-of-ways. Doesn't matter who you are, on duty, off duty, a panhandler, or fundraiser. It's illegal to solicit in the right-of-way until we brought an ordinance forward that created a process that made it legal. It was us that brought the Department of Transportation in to discuss whether or not they would allow solicitation in their right-of-ways, because quite frankly, we received a letter from them saying they wouldn't allow it. We didn't solicit that letter. They heard about our permit process and they said, hey, we don't allow that. What are you guys doing? Well, we brought them in, and the commissioner himself came and sat with us and said that he thought they could allow this under special events, but they would probably have to go to the legislature and change the law, because the way it reads right now, it's a real stretch to allow it. But we're the ones that brought them in to accomplish that. So I reject the notion that this was anything but an effort to try and move this fundraiser forward. Keep in mind that in the fire department, 2/3 of the entire department is off on any given day. There are people to conduct this event and to make a great success of it. But be that as it may, you know, it's up to the body to decide how you want to proceed. But let's get the facts straight before we vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please start voting. Got it locked in? The vote's 8-3. The mayoral veto has been overridden by the body. We now move down to committee reports. Harriet?
No report, Mr. Chair.
No report.
Elvie?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jennifer?
No, thank you.
Pat?
Mr. Chairman, the Port Committee will next convene on Tuesday, April 10 at 10 a.m. in room 155 at City Hall. We're going to talk about the revised timeline that's under discussion between port officials, MARAD, ICRC, and the Army Corps of Engineers, and the various operational concerns stemming therefrom, and then we'll get into budgetary issues. And we'll also, at request of the Port, we'll summarize some of the discussion we had at our joint work session with the Mat-Su Borough Assembly.
Mr. Chairman.
Is your comment on the port?
Mr. Flynn,
Pat?
yes, just to confirm, I heard April, but is it truly August 10?
Sorry, August 10, my apologies.
And what time again?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Gosh, you're getting my memory.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
A question for Mr. Flynn. Have we heard from the Mat-Su Borough Assembly as to whether or not they will have participation as we invited them?
We have not. We provided information about the meeting to the borough clerk, and hopefully that invitation will be extended to their members, and we'll hear back from them.
Thank you. Mr. Starr, sir?
No report.
Mr. Hall, sir?
No, thank you.
Paul?
Sir, we got met last with the Public Safety Committee. We're still working on some potential ordinance rewrites on both the 880 or the nuisance fine calls, 8 in a calendar year, and what defines a calendar year. The other is the skateboarding. So we'll be furthering that up and be working with the municipal assembly legal section to try to work in that language. Did meet with Mr. Starr's group and as a chair with the Finance and Budget, and had some real good comments there, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about the budget building as we come up. Also, real quick, like on public safety, the Forget Me Not Mission, a very good nonprofit that's been in effect about 3-4 years, published this book, recently released. It's Soul Shaking Grief. These are victims' memorial, Alaskan cases, incidents for impaired driving, and it's an awareness guide. And in the back of the book, they give these free to the public. They're at Tidal Wave Books. They're available there while supplies last. And in the back of the book, there's some contacts for Royal and Nancy Bidwell, and they look forward back any feedback from this body or the public as to if it's a good forum in which to get the information and education out there. So each facility person I pass them out personally has a copy of it.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. I appreciate that. Mr. Gutierrez?
No committee report, Mr. Chairman, but just a quick comment on your chair's report that I neglected to make. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for setting up that joint work session with the Mat-Su Borough Assembly, and I understand it is your intention to do that more often. I thought it was productive, I thought it was valuable, and I think we should do it more often.
25th of October, sir, is when we're going to try and shoot for.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you being there because we share a lot in common with our colleagues up there. In fact, some of their ordinances we see mirrored here, and some of ours get mirrored up there. Ms. Osiander, ma'am.
Title 21 will be meeting on Thursday, July 29th, starting at 9:30 in the Planning Department Conference Room. We have finished a revision of the wind tower ordinance. We're doing our quick last look at it on Thursday morning, and then you'll see it shortly after. We also will be talking about snow storage requirements. So if anybody's interested in that, please come.
Snow storage is always an interesting subject in this town. There are some snow dumps from last year that are still there. And if the summer doesn't get warmer, they're still going to be there.
Well, the proposals are a pretty significant change from current law.
Thank you, ma'am. We're now down to addendum to the agenda. If I get a motion to incorporate, I'll go through it with you. It's item 9A2, Resolution AR 2010-224, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring Anchorage firefighter Elliot Taylor for his professionalism and service to the community and country. Item 9A3, Resolution AR 2010-228, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and remembering Chudiak Volunteer Fire Department firefighter and retired Fire Chief Arthur W. Wallace. Item 9B5, under Resolutions for Action Other, Resolution AR 2010-225, resolution appropriating $50,000 of energy efficiency and conservation block grant funding from United States Department of Energy, DOE, as an allocation under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and 2009 through the Matanuska-Susitna Mat-Su Borough, and a contribution in the amount of $2,134 to the Public Transportation Department, Area-Wide General Fund 101, to the Department of Neighborhoods Federal Grant Fund 241 as matching funds to the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant under the American Recovery and Reinvestment of 2009 for a Regional Transportation Authority study between Anchorage and Mat-Su Borough. Department of Neighborhoods, there's a memorandum accompanies this, AM 421-2010. Under bid awards, item 9C2, a memorandum AM 422-2010, recognition award to Renegade Equipment LLC for B Street RID, West Tudor Road to West 40th Avenue, to the Municipality of Anchorage Project Management Engineering Department, ITB 2010C032, $1,151,390. Under new businesses, item 9D4, a memorandum AM 423-2010, Police and Fire Retirement Board appointment, Everett Robbins from the Mayor's Office. Item 9D5 is same memorandum AM 424-2010, a sole source contract to provide LifePak 1000 automated external defibrillators from the Fiscal Control of the municipality of Anchorage, Anchorage Fire Department, AFD, and Anchorage Police Department, APD, $1,150,046 purchasing. Item 9D6, the same memorandum, AM 425, 2010, continuation of a lease agreement for this Sealy substation from Woodland Business Park LLC for the municipality of Anchorage. Anchorage Police Department, $76,662 purchasing. Item 9D7, the same memorandum, AM 426, 2010, change order number 1 to purchase order number 291172 with new flyer for the municipality of Anchorage, Public Transportation Department, $232,266.20. Item 9D8, same memorandum, AM 429, 2010, sole source contract with MWH Americas, Inc., to provide professional engineering services for the Campbell Lake Sediment Removal Improvement District Phase 2 project for the municipality of Anchorage, project management and engineering, PM&E, $85,000 purchasing. Under 9E5, information reports, information memorandum, AIM 80-2010, AR 2010-135, citizen naming panel for the Anchorage Museum, fourth floor gallery. Where's my language? Item 9DF on the backside. 3, resolution AR 2010-226, a resolution appropriating $350,000 Alaska Center for the Performing Arts Capital Reserve Account Fund 401 for various repairs and replacement work to be performed at the APCA in the Office of Community Planning and Development. Public hearing request on that is 8/17/2010. There is an accompanying same memorandum, AM 427/2010. Under item 9F4, resolution AR 2010-227, a resolution appropriating $566,214 as contribution from Alaska Pacific University, APU, to Anchorage Roads and Drainage Service Area Capital Improvement Fund 441 and Project Management and Engineering Department, PME, for the federal earmark match requirement for the University Lake Drive Extension, PME project number 08-61. Public hearing requested on 8/17/2010. Along with that, there's an same memorandum, AM 428/2010. And there was one laid on the table tonight, which is item 14F. It's 2010. Let's see. Let me find that one. Sorry. Where'd that one hit off to?
Is it 216?
Yep.
S,
got it.
S version?
It's AR 2010-216S, a resolution appropriating when tendered $99,512,700 of legislative grants from State of Alaska, Senate Bill 230. This is an S version that we'll deal with when we get there tonight. Anything else that needs added to the addendum to the agenda? Seeing and hearing nothing, is there any objection to the addendum to the agenda being incorporated? Seeing no objection, Madam Clerk, let the minutes reflect we did that. Now we're down to consent agenda. If I get a motion on the agenda, please.
Move to approve.
And now we're going to go for those items that need pulled for a little further discussion. Harriet?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'd like to pull item 9, Bravo 4. My intent is not to introduce it at this time, simply to pull it from the consent agenda.
Anything else, ma'am?
No, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Burt, sir?
No items.
Ms. Gray Jackson, anything, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pull item 9, Apple 2. Thank you.
Ms. Johnston, ma'am?
No, thank you.
Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of my colleague, Mr. Gutierrez, I'd like to pull item 9, Bravo 3, so he can declare a conflict of interest.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hall, sir? Sorry.
No,
Mr.
no
Starr,
items.
sir?
No item.
Mr. Hall, sir?
No items.
Ms. Honeman? Mr. Honeman?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. For questions 9, D Delta 1.
Is that all, sir?
That's it for
Mr.
me.
Gutierrez, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pull 9 Alpha 1, 9 Bravo 4,
9 Bravo 4, did you say?
Mr. Drummond already pulled 9 Bravo 4.
You already-
mistake, and 9 Delta 4. For
That's on the
Mr.
addendum.
Honeman, who will have a conflict on that, I believe.
9 Delta 4 is on the addendum. Is that all, sir?
That's it. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Ostander, ma'am?
I'm hoping there'd be no objection if all assembly members are listed as sponsors for A2.
I think that would be more than appropriate.
I
Madam
do,
Clerk, if you
and
please
then
let that
I'd-
happen.
Thank you, and I'd like to add A3.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you. I neglected to pull an item, if it's okay.
Which one, ma'am?
9 Elephant 1. And, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just state the purpose, and maybe I won't even have to pull it, but I just want to thank AWW. Should I do it now, or should I wait till we get to it?
I would rather you, if you want to just thank him now and then don't.
And then they can go home. Yeah, I'd like to thank AWW for probably the first audit that I've ever seen, at least that I can remember, where there were no recommendations from the internal auditor. I was really, really impressed. Thank you for doing a wonderful job. Please thank your employees, and congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Item is not then. Is there anything from the administration that they wish to pull?
Not to pull, Mr. Chairman, just we passed out an S version of something that'll come up under public hearing.
All right, I put that under the addendum to the agenda, and we've. Anything else, Mr. Mayor? Thank you. Let's see. Ask unanimous consent on the agenda in front of us, the consent agenda. Is there any objection? Not seeing any. Those items were pulled. Mr. Mayor, is there anybody that was appointed to anything? I didn't see any, but.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I apologize. Normally, you would repeat the items that have been pulled before we approve the consent agenda,
Okay.
just to make
item
sure we got them all.
Item 9A1 was pulled. Item 9B3 was pulled. Item 9B4 was, excuse me, what? 9A2 was pulled. Thank you.
And A3.
A3 was pulled off the addendum. Item B3, B4. Item D1. And then we also pulled item D4 on the addendum to the agenda. That was pulled by Mr. Gutierrez. Short of that, I don't have anything. Ask unanimous consent on the agenda. On seeing no objection, those items are approved, Madam Clerk. We're now going to go back to those items for a little further discussion.
Move to approve A1.
Second.
Second. This is Resolution R 2010-220, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing honoring Marion Williams for 20 years of service with the Anchorage Public Library. And let's see, who's doing that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm reading that.
Okay.
Whereas on March 9th, 1982, Mary Williams was hired by the municipality of Anchorage as a children's librarian with the Anchorage Public Library, and where she has worked continuously until her retirement on July 31st, 2010. And whereas Mary Williams has held the position of branch manager for the Chugiak Eagle River Branch Library since 1986, and whereas Mary Williams has served the Chugiak Eagle River community at 4 different library locations, and whereas Mary Williams has participated in 3 library moves, and as the great gardener that she is, has grown the library after each of these moves, and whereas Mary Williams and her staff were given an honorable mention in the Work Unit of the Year Direct Group on March 25th, 2010, And whereas Mary Williams retires from the municipality of Anchorage effective July 31st, 2010, and has served the Chugiak Eagle River community with dedication and professionalism, now therefore be it resolved that the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes and honors Mary N. Williams for her commitment to public library service and to the municipality of Anchorage and the citizens of Anchorage.
Mary, was there anything you wanted to say to us? Mary, thank you. 28 years is remarkable.
Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman,
ma'am.
She is a phenomenon. She is such a strong presence in the Chugiak Eagle River Library. I remember seeing her the first time when my kids came in there when they were like 3 or 4. And it's true. She has gone everywhere. She has moved books and done fundraising, everything you can possibly imagine. She's going to be a real loss.
Thank you. We really appreciate working for the city for that long because the books are just a real love. And with the kids, it transmits knowledge through generations. And thank you very much. Next item in front of us is off the agenda to the addendum agenda, item 982, Resolution AR 2010-224 resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring Anchorage firefighter Elliot Taylor for his professionalism and service to the community and country. Need a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Ask unanimous? See no objection, that's approved. So, Mike, who's reading it?
Can we bring up all that, please?
And if there's anybody here who wants to come take pictures, come on down front to take them, because that way there's no problem.
I think the whole family should be here.
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honoring Anchorage firefighter Elliot Taylor for his professionalism and service to the community and country. Whereas, on July 14, 2010, Elliot Taylor, a devoted husband, loving son, and member of the Anchorage Fire Department, died at the age of 26. And whereas, born in Anchorage on August 8, 1983, Elliot Taylor was a lifelong Alaska resident and served in the United States Marine Corps. And whereas, during his United States Marine Corps service, Elliot Taylor met his wife, Lacey, and they were married in 2005. And whereas, Elliot Taylor, a 3-year veteran of the Anchorage Fire Department, worked out of Fire Station Number 3 in Airport Heights. And whereas, in the words of Fire Chief Mark Hall, Elliot epitomized what the Anchorage Fire Department looks for in a firefighter. He was hard-working, conscientious, compassionate, and dedicated to serving the citizens of Anchorage. And whereas, Elliot Taylor will be remembered as a servant to his country, community, and family. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Assembly recognizes and honors Elliot Taylor for his professionalism and service to our community and country.
Thank you.
No, be nice. They did a good job.
I'm doing something to the mayor.
No, don't do that. Do something that, this is for Elliot. It's for Elliot.
I'm telling you, I'm gonna.
It's okay. You don't have to say anything.
No, I have something to say. I just don't know if a lot of people want to hear it. Ellie, thank you for your support and your cards and for supporting the fire department and the rest of the assembly. Mayor Sullivan, with all due respect for your position, I feel that you may be unaware of the caliber of men that work for you on the Anchorage Fire Department. Politics and bureaucracy aside, what they do for this city and this community is second to none. And I feel that you need to support them a little bit more. And as far as the MDA goes, I mean, sometimes common sense and good deeds should override bureaucracy. Thank you. AFD, you're my sanity. I love all of you guys. I'm sorry.
Next item in front of us comes off the addendum to the agenda. It's item 9A3.
Move to approve.
This is AR 2010-228, resolution of the Instruments Assembly recognizing and remembering Chugach Volunteer Fire Department firefighter and retired Fire Chief Arthur W. Wallace.
Could the
Unanimous
Wallaces come
consent?
forward, please?
Ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, that's approved. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm going to wait till they get down here, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
These guys are original homesteaders in Chugach. This is a resolution of the Assembly recognizing and remembering Chugach Volunteer Fire Department firefighter, retired Fire Chief Arthur Wallace. Whereas on June 30th, 2010, Art Wallace passed away at the age of 79. Whereas Art Wallace was one of 3 brothers who relocated from New York to Chugach in 1954. Whereas Art Wallace served honorably with the United States Marine Corps during the Korean conflict, and in 1954, he took part in the construction of the Eklutna power plant for the U.S. government. Whereas Art and his brothers were industrious and hardworking, forming a business that produced concrete blocks which were poured into from concrete mixed by hand. Whereas Art Wallace constructed a building on the Palmer Highway in Chugach where he opened Fuji Gifts, an enterprise highly popular for many years, attracting customers from all over South Central Alaska to purchase exotic imported items. Whereas the Wallace brothers were strong supporters of the Chugach Volunteer Fire Department. And when Chugach became a service area of the Greater Anchorage Area Borough in 1964, the Volunteer Fire Department operated under the auspices of the Borough Assembly, and it has continued service under the municipality of Anchorage since that time. Whereas Fuji Gifts was located directly across the road from Chugach Fire Station, usually make Art Wallace the closest volunteer to respond to emergency calls. Whereas responding to emergency calls when he was alone at the store made it necessary for Art to urgently toss back indoors his vast array of merchandise on display outside the store, lock the door, run across the road to begin response to the emergency fire call. And whereas if customers were in the store when the call for help came, Art would ask the customers, whether known to him or strangers, to just leave the money for their purchases on the counter and lock the door when they left, afterwards boasting with pride nothing was ever stolen. Whereas Art Wallace was a capable and conscientious firefighter, and he served as chief of the Volunteer Fire Department from 1966 to 1970, finally retiring due to poor health after 30 years. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly honors and recognizes Arthur F. Wallace for his faithful service to the people of Chugach, the Chugach Volunteer Fire Department, municipality of Anchorage, and extends its sincere appreciation and condolences to his family and friends. Passed and approved this day.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Could you speak in the mic, Phil?
I used to work with him 50 years ago in Anchorage Bedding, and he was a young man, about 17, and he had a work ethic that wouldn't quit. Good to see you. I just recognized, I saw your name up there, and I wondered, where are you? And then it dawned on me. Well, thanks an awful lot for the...
And I thought I had escaped to that. I'd like to make one addition. My brother was a volunteer fireman for 40 years.
40 years.
40 years.
But he was only...
Yeah, 40 years.
Yeah, we were there back in the... We got there when it was the territory, and Art and I, we made concrete blocks right across the street from the fire hall. And so we were the only ones there during the day when there was a fire. Everybody else was working for civil service in Anchorage. So we were the only ones basically in the community. There were a couple of others that would show up. But thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Phil, could you speak in the microphone? They can't pick you up. There you go.
I just want to thank you for the honor bestowed upon my brother. Art and I lived right across from the fire hall. That's where we made our concrete block. And we were often the only ones there to go to a fire because everybody else was working in town, had gainful employment. And we started that business out there with $15, 50-some years ago. But thanks an awful lot. Art was sure a dedicated fireman.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Just
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
We can't get the cue to go, but I don't know if I yield to Mr. Gutierrez. I think he was trying to cue in first.
I just wanted to, I've seen this. I don't know if you've seen this or and the other assembly members. We'll pass it back down. But
all the way from there down.
This is actually a photograph of Art at a fire.
Right.
That's a very impressive photo.
Right, in '84, and that's the house that was blown up at Thunderbird Heights.
Wow.
And the man was, I forgot if he was killed or not. It was connected to a murder, and the man was in jail that ordered that done from Steilacoom.
Very impressive. Very impressive. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Honeman?
Mr. Wallace, both, I just wanted to point out it's men and women like you that actually gives Anchorage, Eagle River, Chugiak, Girdwood, it gives us our flavor, and I appreciate all that you've done as well, and I honor the presence of your departed brother, and I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm just thankful for your commitment to the community and your service to the community.
Yeah, I'd like to add just one comment. We're very proud of the Chugiak Volunteer Fire Company. And back in the early 50s, I had a young man from Germany working with me. He was a real good worker. But he wondered why we had a volunteer fire company. He said, why doesn't the government furnish it? We just had old junk to work with, but it was, in fact, I remember. We had red water buckets like you used to see in the Western movies when the house would catch on fire. They had a bucket brigade. We had those buckets. And they had round bottoms, real rounded, so you couldn't set them down, so you couldn't be lazy, because if you set them down, the bucket would tip over. But yeah, we went through a lot. But I told the young man, when he said, gee, why doesn't the government furnish the fire trucks and company? I said, that's the difference between America and Germany, that we were pioneers and you do it yourself. There's nobody there to help you. You take care of your own problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Item 9B3 is next. Resolution Air 2010-221. Resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $3,000 for the Department of Justice Community Capacity Development Office through Anchorage Community Land Trust and $1,270 as a contribution from the 2010 Anchorage Police Operating Budget, Anchorage Metropolitan Police Service Area Fund 151 to the State and Federal Pass-Through Grants Fund 231 and Anchorage Police Department for this Weed and Seed Program Coordination Grant. Mr. Flynn.
Move to approve.
Mr. Flynn.
Mr. Chairman.
Refer to Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you. This particular Weed and Seed is the program that I coordinate in my day job. And as the body is aware, I've been told in no uncertain terms by the United States Department of Justice that I may not participate in this vote.
Well, let me be consistent. You may not participate in this vote.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else work for this organization? Probably not. Ask unanimous consent and approval of this item. Not seeing an objection. That item is approved, Madam Clerk. Next item in front of us is item 9B4, Resolution Air 2010-223. This was pulled by Harriet. And Harriet, you pulled this just to let it pass on?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Just a note to the clerk, my request to speak button is not working on this screen. I don't know how to
We have a technical problem, Ms. Drummond. Please
other
proceed.
than to be called on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not moving to introduce this item, this Resolution 221, at this time, because I'm not going forward with it at this time. And I would appreciate it if there was no second or any
Probably
other.
want a motion to postpone indefinitely, Ms. Drummond.
That's fine.
If you make that motion, I'll second for you.
It doesn't have to be done. It merely has to
Okay.
not be introduced.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item in front of us is item 9D1, Memorandum AM 418-2010 Recreation Award to HUSKH, Inc., for providing various professional engineering services on an as-required basis for the municipality of Anchorage project management and engineering, $750,000. Mr. Honeman pulled that one.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Through the chair, to the
Need a
admin.
motion?
Oh, motion to approve?
Thank you. Mr. Honeman?
Oh, sorry.
I know, Deb, we're trying to figure out what's wrong with it.
Difficulties, yeah.
Paul?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the administration, I had posed some questions electronically, and I didn't see anything. I'm not sure if it was a protocol problem for myself through the Assembly Clerk's office or not, but as I read through the document, some of my questions were answered, but when I read the synopsis on the agenda, it was just a $3.25 million appropriation for what appeared to be more project management, and as it turns out, it was more professional services for project engineering. I noted that we had $2.5 million contracts with contract extensions approved back in April, and so I was a little concerned that we were pushing $4 million, and what were we getting for the money? And I see that there are some electrical, structural, and landscape services here, and it does spell out some specifics. It says as needed, and is there a baseline? I mean, for instance, is there from past experiences that we have a baseline of how often this as needed is, and are we anticipated to stay within the $750,000? Do you know?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Holman, yes, there is a baseline. These are for services that we use on a regular basis. They're not funded with this approval. They are simply selected contractors. So
Sir, could I get you to speak in your microphone, please?
Thank you. The contracts are not funded with this. They are funded through other funded projects that come before the Assembly. This simply selects the consultants that they can use on an as-needed basis as they need it. If they needed to change an intersection to fix an ADA problem or something like that, they would go to these contractors. The funding would come through a separate appropriation, which you would see in most cases.
And that was part two of my question, which was the funding. Is the funding for these, is it coming out of general government funds, or is it from projects, for instance, bonds or grants or something like that?
Directly from projects in almost all cases.
From the project. And the projects
bonds
are
or grants in most cases. Yes.
Thank you. I just want to make sure.
This does cut down our overhead quite a bit, so we don't have to go through a selection process each time we need a small engineering or architectural type.
And it makes sense. I just had to ask the question because, again, I initially thought it was more project management, and then as I read through it, it became more clear that it was.
It's design assistance.
Design. And one other question. Do we have staff that does similar duties? Do we have staff on?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Holman, we're selecting structural and electrical here. We do not have structural and electrical on our staff. We do have a landscape architect, but the workload is such that occasionally they need help. So the only one that we do have or complementary staff is landscape architecture, but they're involved in reviewing virtually all of the projects we do, and so occasionally we need design assistance there, but we don't have electrical and structural on our staff.
Thanks, sir. And no further questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Ask unanimous consent, seeing no objection, item is approved. Thank you, Mr. Honeman. Next item in front of us is off the addendum to the agenda. It's item 9D4, Memorandum AM 423-2010 Police and Fire Retirement Board appointment. And that was pulled by Mr. Gutierrez. Sorry. You moved it, Deb?
I believe Mr. Honeman has a conflict
I
of interest.
declare a conflict of interest, Mr. Chair. Even though it likely has very little bearing, I do draw retirement from the Police and Fire Retirement Board. So.
Then you have a conflict on that one. Did somebody make a motion to approve it? Somebody second it? Yes. Okay. Is there any other comments from Assembly members? Sorry, we're trying to get the system working again. Sorry about that. Any other comments from Assembly members? Ask unanimous consent, seeing no objection, item is approved by the body.
And that's
You figured out what it is yet? Okay. I think it's something Barbara put in the system to shut it down when she's gone.
I believe that's it, Mr. Chairman. We're ready to move on to...
We're now ready to move on to appearances and requests. We have Bo Bassett here regarding the Spirit of Youth Community Initiative. Bo?
Yes, thank you.
It's been a while since I've seen you, sir.
Yes,
How have
it
you
has.
been?
We're all getting younger.
Speak for yourself.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, gee, it's
Mr.
working
Chair,
now. Thank you.
and members of the Assembly. My name is Robert C. Bo Bassett. I'd like to stand here this evening for a few minutes and give you an update on our exceptional Spirit of Community initiative as opposed to Spirit of Youth initiative. So what I'm going to do is give you some written materials, and then I'll proceed with explaining that a little bit. Thank you very much. I'm here as a volunteer this evening. I have been committed to the young people in Anchorage for quite some time. I think I'm in my 38th year of professional youth development, and it's pretty wonderful to sit amongst YEP young people. It makes me feel very comfortable, and I'm glad you're here tonight. And I've been running on the bike trails and seeing a lot of the work that you've done. I just want to give you a shout out that a lot of good stuff is going on. So appreciate that, and I like that you're here. I'd like to speak specifically to the wonderful job that Prudential, Jack White, Vista Real Estate, and National Prudential does, both nationally but more specifically in Alaska. And I've given you some information. I'd just like to highlight that we're in our 14th year of supporting Prudential's initiative to encourage young people to get actively involved in the community. As you know, that we've been talking a lot about service tonight, and it's wonderful to see the honoring of firefighters. And you know, service is a funny word. It essentially comes down to a helping act and helping others. And if you add the word volunteer, I was particularly struck by the comment about volunteer firefighters and how different it is when you volunteer. You give your time freely, you're not paid, and you know the opportunity cost, you could be doing something else, but you're helping your community. So what Prudential did in 1995 is they said, you know, we could rekindle community spirit, which is essential for communities to be vital, by encouraging young people to volunteer. And they did that by partnering with the Principals Association, and they have a wonderful award purely based on community service and volunteerism. And last evening, a parent came over. Her daughter was the middle school winner at Central Middle School, and she said, you know, we were cleaning out her closet. She's off to college, and we'd like you to have her jacket as the top middle school volunteer. She's gone to college, and we just want you to know how it shaped her. She's interested in public administration, community service, and I guess the connection I want to make is that when Prudential said we're going to help young people get involved at the elementary, middle school, and high school level, they really opened the door for young people to become future assembly members, mayors, and part of the public fabric. Some would call that citizenship. I just say that service, helping others, is what Prudential has done. So by honoring young people with awards in all the schools, in the Red Cross, the 4-H, the Girl Scouts, there's a great article on the program in the Alaska Business Monthly magazine from May. And I would just highlight that our top high school volunteer was at Chugiak High. The article was written by a high school volunteer at Polaris, and the young people in the article that are mentioned are from our middle school and high schoolers that were trained in Prudential's sponsored Points of Light Youth Leadership Institute. So the connection I'd like to make is, while recognition is important, service is really for all young people. And if we communicate that ethic, that we would like you to volunteer and help in an area of your interest, that starts them on their career path. It starts them to really think about learning differently and be more motivated in school. And when they get farther into high school, of course, they're presenting their volunteer service as an important criteria in getting into college today and getting scholarships. You know, this is common sense, but to do it and to do it well we need organizations and businesses and community members like Prudential to partner with public servants. So the point of being here this evening is to give you a heads up that Prudential is launching their 14th year at this here in Anchorage in Alaska. The awards will be given out in all the schools this fall, middle and high school, public and private. Prudential supports the program financially. It's an all-volunteer effort. And then we do a leadership training that Prudential created called the Points of Light Youth Leadership Institute. And I would suggest, again, that this is essential to every young person to have leadership training that prepares them to be effective adults. And that being said...
You're up to your time limit.
Yep. That being said, there's a Train the Trainer coming up next week. So in your galaxy of community members, we have 7 adults signed up for a 3-day training at the Salvation Army. Who do you know that would be appropriate to be trained in the Points of Light Youth Leadership Institute? And then finally, I would like you to look through the handbook that we've given you. This was a 10-year product, and I would like you to look through it, and then I want you to give it to a young person in the next week. And I want to thank Mr. Honeman for being involved in the program for 14 years when he was a patrolman. And I'd like to thank some of the assembly members for all their support. And we'd like you to be champions for young people in volunteerism. Thanks very much.
Mr. Honeman has comments. Mr. Honeman?
And that was just to the point there, Bo, and I thank you for not just being talking the talk, but also walking the walk and being that enthusiastic spark plug that keeps these youth engaged and involved. And I have been involved with you, sometimes a little less than others, but I do appreciate all your efforts that you've done with Piley and Potential Youth Leadership, as well as the training that goes on. And I mean, I've been there and I've seen it from around the state, not just Anchorage youth, but from around the state. And it's very important to note that these kids, these youth, are becoming young men and women who will better this city and the state for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Sullivan has a comment. Mr. Sullivan, sir? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, hi, Bo. Just wanted to say again thank you. During my 9 years on the Assembly, I had the privilege to watch you in action on many, many occasions, and just really impressed by the energy you've put into this over the years. And I have many good friends over at Prudential, Jack White, and I want to thank them publicly as well for their financial support. And I really just appreciate the fact that you instill that spirit and what true volunteerism really means in terms of giving up your own time and your own resources to make your community better. And you're doing a great service.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for being here, Paul. Next item is Youth Employment and Parks presentation. How are you?
Good evening. I'm Beth Nordland with the Anchorage Park Foundation, and welcome to the 4th season, the class of 2010, for Youth Employment and Parks. We have 35 teens with us in the program. They're all wearing the bright shirts, and they want to tell you where they live. They want to tell you what their favorite project of the summer is, and their names, and they know how to do it quick, really quick.
We have the time to do it, ma'am.
We're on it. So what you have for your handout is a map that shows where all of the teens live. It shows how many languages they speak, their ethnic origins, their ages, and then if you look at the map closely, you'll see that there are green spots for where the projects are. And we have YEP projects in most of the districts this year. They worked very hard today building the trail from the senior center to the Chester Creek Trail, so they might be a little tuckered out. I tried to give them chocolate. Okay, let's start with Ashley's row. Everyone stand up and get in line, and then we'll go. And then Nash.
Hi, my name is Ashley. I'm in District 5. I'm now promoted senior crew member. My favorite part of YEP this year is University Lake. The bake restoration was awesome. I would never know about that until this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Han Saylor, and I am from District 5. And my favorite project this year was the rain garden at Westchester Lagoon.
Thank you.
My name is James Goodge. I'm from District 1, and my favorite project so far was the rain garden in Westchester Lagoon because it was so close to my house. Okay.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Letitia, and my favorite project is the one at Chester Creek because I live near there, and I'm from District 1.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name's James Amundsen, and I live in District 6. And my favorite part about the program is all the new experiences we get and the leadership stuff that we learn. It's really cool.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nicole Deaton. I live in District 5. And my favorite project is the University Lake project because I get to see the impact of our work.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Grace Smitten, and I'm from District 6, and one of my favorite parts of YEP is coming home dirty every day.
I'm Kristen Leahy. I live in District 1, and my favorite project while working with YEP this year was the bank restoration at the University Lake.
Hello, my name is Melody Kunsevath. I'm from Section 4, and my favorite project is working at the Senior Center right now and building the trail. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Teresa Nave. I live in District 6, and my favorite part of YEP has been learning how to build trails.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Shannon O'Hara. I live in District 3. And one thing I've learned this year through YEP was invasive species of different plants.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Nick Harmon. I live in District 5. My favorite project with YEP was our project at University Lake because I live close there. I visit the area often, and it was nice to be able to make an impact there.
Did you make an impact on the beavers that are cutting the trees down there?
We did.
Hi, my name is Sarah Scrocky. I'm from District 6, and my favorite project was last week we're at Hilltop, and I learned how to use a chainsaw, which is pretty exciting.
My name is Stephen Dearborn. I live in District 2, and my favorite project for YEP was University Lake, where we planted 6,000 willows to restore the banks. So.
Hi, my name is Brian Wise. I work on the rec side, so I like working with the kids and at Davis Park.
Hello. Hi, my name is Abram Tuyak, and I live in Eagle River in District 2. And my favorite part of YEP was just it being my first experience in working. Just nice to build work history and resume. So, yeah, good first job. I'd recommend it. My name is Eric Williams. I live in District 1 and 3, and I really like getting involved with the community.
My name is John Hill. I'm from District 5. I'm working as a crew leader this year, and my favorite part about the program is the opportunity that I have to participate in the environmental education component of our program and teaching that since I study wildlife biology.
Good job. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Wahlberg. I'm in District 5. My favorite part of the whole program is just being able to work on all these different projects, knowing later in time that it will make a bigger impact on the people that use it because they're all appreciative of it.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dirk Fujimoto. I'm in District 1. My favorite project is the one we're working on right now at the Senior Center, building them a trail. So,
good, thank you.
Hi, I'm Sneesa Gavin. I'm from District 5, and I'm on the rec side, and I've enjoyed through YEP building sand structures with Jen Joleth at Davis Park.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie Fisher. I'm from District 6. My favorite part of the summer has been the Artists in the Park program.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is McCall Sweet. I'm from District 3, and my favorite part of this year was going down to Girdwood and taking pictures for Alaska Geographic.
Thank you.
My name is Evan Doig, and I live in District 6, and my favorite part of the summer is also working at University Lake.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Flynn. I'm from District 5, and my favorite part about YEP was the bike trail, coastal trail ride. Right.
Good, thank you.
Hi, my name is Mika Ranta. This is my third year with the Youth Employment and Parks program, and I've had the opportunity to work with the recreation side. And my favorite thing has been the opportunity to take out the kids on field trips, and they can experience activities they might have not been able to experience otherwise.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Weber. I live in District 4, and my favorite project was making a trail at Willowa Park.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Samuel Funk. I live in District 3, and it's my first job. I've really enjoyed it. My favorite project is probably at University Lake doing the bank restoration.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tyler Goodwin, and I'm a crew leader for the recreation side. I'm in District 6, and my favorite part of this year was providing a safe place for the kids in the Russian Jack area to come and recreate and have fun each day. Thank you.
Thank you. Great group of kids.
Great group of kids. Thank you for your support for the program 4 years in a row. We'll be back. And we would like to cordially invite each of you to a barbecue tomorrow at the Senior Center from 3 to 5. This is a project that was funded by the Alaska State Legislature. So there'll be several legislators there, and we've done a press release, so we'll see how far that goes. But we're just excited to have the seniors who've been working side by side a little bit with some of the teens, break bread and have a good event. They're still in the middle of that project. It very much looks like the middle. But it's going to be a beautiful trail. It's only a quarter mile long, but you wonder, it's a long time coming. It's going to be a great thing for Anchorage. Does anyone have questions?
We have a few for you. Mr. Gutierrez is first, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not questions, just really some comments. I had the privilege of meeting with and talking to some of these young folks on Friday, those on the park side, and thank you for having me. It was very pleasurable. I was glad to be there. I told them, and I want to say the same thing to the folks on the rec side, that it's not just a job that you're doing, you're actually improving people's lives. By improving the parks, you improve their quality of lives. By doing those activities with those kids, I guarantee you, when they're 40, 50, 60 years old, they will still remember the things they did with you during the summer. You had a big impact, and you did some really great stuff. So thank you for what you did. The only other thing I wanted to say is there were a lot of District 5. District 5, raise your hand. District 5 rules. That's what I'm saying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mayor Sullivan, moving on from District 5, sir.
Yes.
You represent the whole town, Mayor.
That's right. We'll segue from District 5. I just wanted to personally thank Beth and the crew at the Anchorage Parks Foundation and, of course, all the YEP workers this year. You really make a difference out there, and we're trying, of course, when there's budget challenges to leverage both monies and labor, and we were pretty successful in the legislature this year with our grant programs on behalf of the Parks Foundation, and we're going to keep that as a priority in our program going forward. So, again, just thank you, and as others have said, you've made the community better this summer. We thank you for that.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to thank Beth for all of her hard work working with these young people, and thank all of you young people out there, because you really do a really great job, and I want to thank you for that. But I love keeping track of how many kids are in each district, and I do it every time. And there were two that didn't mention a district, and I'm praying that you say you're from District 4, because so far we only have two, and I'm not real happy about that. So there were two. I think it was you, and then another. You're in 3? Shucks. 4? All right. We get 3. Thank you very much. And yes, Mr. Gutierrez, District 5 rules with 8 and pisses me off. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hall, sir. Ernie.
Thank you. Well, I want to begin by particularly thanking the young people. I mean, I can't imagine a job more greater than this summer, being out in the sun all day, day in, day out, just thoroughly enjoying that adventure. But I really want to put on my hat here for a moment as a board member of the Park Foundation, and thank you on behalf of that organization, and particularly an appreciation to the mayor, who seems to have stepped out of the room at the moment, but on behalf of the Park Foundation, how appreciative we are of the working relationship we have with this administration. John Rada with the Parks and Rec Department. If it weren't for you guys and a public-private partnership, none of this would be able to happen. So, Mr. Mayor, John, thank you. Well done.
Mr. Birch, sir.
Well, not to be too much of a stickler for details here, but I did happen to count the little red dots in the map, and it looks like Section 6 that Ms. Johnston and I represent has 9 red dots.
Those are projects, Mr. Birch, projects.
No, it says approximate location of crew members' homes. Thank you.
John, good point.
Thank you for all your service to this town. You know, I created the dog parks a long time ago in this town, and the nice thing about the University Lake, the dog parks are everywhere around there, so thanks for your help restoring the banks. And like I said about those beavers, got to figure out a way to muzzle those critters because they're taking trees down all the time. I can't say that. The feds would be after me. EPA wanted to send me to jail one time, if I remember correctly. But thank you very much for what you do to the city, for the city, okay? We had this little problem with additive they were adding in the gas tank, and we outlawed it, and the feds wanted to send me to jail for it. Life goes on. Look at the Daily News back in 93, I think, or 92 was one of them. But thank you very much.
Thank
because
you.
we only have one planet to live on, and I appreciate their service making it a better place to live. Thank you.
We'll keep you posted with our end-of-season finale activities, and I'm also, I know I told you this last time, but I really do believe the Secretary of the Interior will be here and celebrating our successes. They're a big funder of the program as well, so I'm going to keep you posted.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one more question, if you'll indulge me, and it's a serious question. When I spoke to the group on Friday, several of you were mentioning that you were considering registering to vote, and there was a deadline coming up. Did you do it?
We registered 5 kids to vote last week before the deadline.
It's the most important thing you can do.
That means you guys
Nice.
get to eat now.
Well done. Well done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Because my children... My children knew they couldn't get dinner if they didn't vote. I didn't care how they voted. I wanted them to vote. So when we went into the polling booth, they would tell me ahead of time who'd been in there and who'd voted. Because we're serious about this. I don't care how you vote, but I really want you to participate in the system. Because without voting, you can't be heard on decisions that are being made. So thank you very much for your service to the city. We're now going to take our dinner break. Dinner's back there and ready for us. So we'll return shortly. 3, an ordinance authorizing the long-term lease between Municipality of Anchorage's lessor and Flight Safety Alaska Inc. as lessee on Lot 7C. Thank you. Block 2, 14A. I'm sorry. I'll let you catch up. Okay. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record, and spell your last name, if you would, please. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, what's the wish of the body? Moved and seconded. Any discussion from assembly members? Asking unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, that item is approved unanimously, Madam Clerk. You what? Let's hope they do well. Okay, next item in front of us is item 14B. Item 14B is Resolution AR 2010- What? I already did. And I got a motion to approve it. Got that passed. Has unanimous consent, no objection. We're on to 14B. Please hit me next time. Item 14B is AR 2010-209, a resolution appropriating $107,500 of Retirement Certificate of Participation, COP,
Waive reading.
Debt Service Fund, contribution to the Anchorage Fire Department Area-Wide General Fund for payment of a labor dispute, labor settlement. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body? Mr. Flynn, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure who the appropriate person in the administration is to respond, but I realize we're basically approving this after the fact. The award had to be made in order to meet the terms of the settlement agreement. Are there limitations on this sort of action by the administration? Is there a level beyond which you can't go and then come back to us for retroactive approval? And if so, what is that?
Rhonda?
Want me to repeat?
Through the chair, Mr. Flynn, I'm sorry. I was engaged in a conversation and I missed your question.
The question is, I recognize we're approving this after the fact because there were legal requirements and legal settlement that compelled the administration to move forward with the disbursement of these funds, and we're just giving the approval after the fact. Is there a level beyond which the administration cannot go without seeking prior approval by the Assembly? And if so, what is that level?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Flynn, and while Ms. Rhonda is thinking about that, in this case, what we're doing is we're repaying the fire department. You can choose not to do that, and it will then come out of their currently approved budget. And so that's the choice that our preference was to reimburse them for this unbudgeted cost. So it's a question of you all approving repayment.
I understood that part. I'm just asking the question, is there a limit to what can be agreed to without our approval?
On the labor settlement.
In a settlement of this nature.
Grievance settlement.
Through the chair, Mr. Flynn, I need to check before I can answer your question. If you could give me a couple of minutes, I could get back to you on that.
Yeah, and I don't want to hold this item up, but if you get back to me on that, I've just something caught my eye and thought maybe we want to address that from a policy perspective moving forward. Yeah.
Through the chair, Mr. Flynn, I'd be happy to do that for you.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. Mr. Chairman, I have no objections to approval.
Mr. Honeman?
Yes, and through the chair, thank you. My question would be, are there any other, we're in August just about, and are there any other anticipated issues similar that might impact the fire department's budget? I understand there were more than one person involved in either a discharge, termination, or perhaps legal issue.
Yes, thank you. There were several. This one right here was from 2008. There were several others that occurred around that time that are starting to come to fruition. So there will be others. They may or may not be in a settlement form, but the potential is there.
Thank you.
Ms. Ostiander, ma'am.
I'm just going to request, sir, with this reminder that we schedule that executive session for the finishing up of the legal issues. Remember, we didn't finish it last time?
Yes, I will set that up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item? Is there any objection to approval of item 14B? See no objection, Madam Clerk. The minutes reflect that was approved unanimously by the body. And Rhonda, if you could get us, Rhonda's gone. Hi, Rhonda. If you could get a determination as to his question for future use, would appreciate it.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, ma'am. So you're not leaving yet. Next item in front of us is item 14C. Resolution AR 2010-210, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $170,700 as contribution from the Air Ride General Fund 101 Real Estate Services.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This is for City Hall capital maintenance and improvements and tenant improvements. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Second.
Discussion from assembly members. Ask unanimous consent. See no objection, Madam Clerk. That item is approved by the body. Next item in front of us is item 14D. Resolution AR 2010-211, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $200,000 of contribution from the Girdwood Valley Service Area Operating
Waive reading.
Budget Fund. Okay. This is for, let's see, Accrued interest on interfund loan from Area-wide General Fund. Thank you. For the development of the Girdwood Community Center and Library. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record, if you would, please. Hearing saying no one, public hearing on this item is closed. What's the wish of the body? Discussion from assembly members. Seeing no discussion, ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, item is approved. Next item in front of us is item 14E, Resolution Air 2010-212, Resolution appropriating $147,940 U.S. Department. Okay. This is for a Community Development Block Grant CDBG program.
No, no. Item 14F has the S version.
14F does, which is deals with Alaska Senate Bill 230. This doesn't have that, ma'am. It's all right. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Hearing and say no in public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Second.
Discussion from assembly members. Doesn't appear anybody. Ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, that item is approved, Madam Clerk. Now, item 14F. As you pointed out correctly, ma'am, is the one we're dealing with now, and then we do have an S version on this. Now, item 14F is Resolution 2010-216, a resolution appropriating when tendered $99,512,700 of legislative grants from State of Alaska, Senate Bill 230, Office of Management and Budget. And there is an S version that comes along with it, AR 2010-216S. So public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Hearing and saying no, and public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body? S version was moved and seconded. You went off the. You went. There was somebody who wanted to talk. I'm sorry. Elby. I'm sorry, we had a computer blip.
That's why I'm glad I can do this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question to the administration. Can you please tell me, save me some time here, what's the difference between the two?
Yes, through the chair, Ms. Gray Jackson. On page 2 of the AR, you can see on line 11, we reduced M&O department by $50,000 because it's for a project that's being transferred to Parks and Rec, which is being increased by the $50,000, and that's the only change.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other discussions from assembly members? Mr. Honeman.
I just noted, wanted to make sure, and I just verified again that the traffic calming projects that we just had the work session on is actually in this packet for approval, and just happy to see that we've got at least a resolution going and work plan going for them.
Thank you.
Thank you to the administration.
Any other comments from assembly members? Seeing none, ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, this item is approved, the S version. Thank you. Next item in front of us is item 14G, Resolution AR 2010-217, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending AR 2009-277 as previously adopted. And this basically reverses a decision made by this body before. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record.
Hi, my name is Kevin Smestead. I'm the Northeast Community Council President. And to begin with, I wanted to start off, I did let people know to come down to testify for the resolution number 2010-090. So I believe might not have as many people showing up tonight because that's where the comments were put in and things like that. So I just wanted to start off by saying that as a first comment.
Go ahead, sir.
But But with regards to this resolution, to start off with, Northeast Community Council and the people in that area really did not want to have the liquor store in Taconic Commons to begin with. So to kind of put it lightly, we were stuck having it there. So by having it there, we came up with a resolution of basically saying we would like to have everyone carded, and we would hope that this would be a future item for all liquor stores beyond this time frame that gets started. And as time went along as well, Mr. Gutierrez started or tried to get it adopted completely, and it became a voluntary item. There are liquor stores within their carryout that within our area that do abide by this. I went to Fred Meyer's last night. They actually have a sign up that says that they do card everyone that shows up. And we've gone to Holiday as well. Holiday does the same thing. They card everyone. And a few other little facts. If you go get cigarettes, you get carded. If you go in to get go to the hospital, go to get any type of care, you're carded. When I go to certain places, I'm carded when I use my credit card. So if I'm driving to a liquor store, I don't see a problem with showing my ID, and it wouldn't matter what age I am. Many people that I've asked this question to do feel that they don't mind pulling out their ID to show it is them, that they are of legal age, whether they're 18 or even 80. And also like to point out that this law does help when they have the red stripes on the card to catch the DUIs. The people that should not be buying alcohol or of any kind, and then being able to drive. So I feel it's something we need to keep in effect. I know it's one store, but it's a starting point. And if it's going to keep even one person off the roads or keep one child under 21 from buying alcohol, we've done our job. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the Assembly members? Mr. Flynn has a question first. Good timing.
Well done, Mr. Schmiestad. Thank you for coming out this evening.
Thank you.
My recollection of our discussion of this last year was the interest of the community council was to have at least all of the stores in the area doing universal ID check. Is that your recollection as well?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
My recollection of the community council's preference, and when we discussed this last year, was that all liquor stores in the Northeast Community Council area provide universal ID check. Is that your recollection?
That's correct, yes. Okay. And as we've gone along throughout the town as well.
Okay, but your specific concern is within your...
with our community council area, that's correct.
Okay. So then you would presumably support some sort of ordinance that would require that for at least your area of town?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Training stepped away. Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Thanks for coming out. Along with that, with the question Mr. Flynn asked you, would you support backing off and doing away with this conditional use on this particular store while we were going through the process of preparing that conditional use ordinance for all the other licensees in the Northeast Community Council area?
Actually, I wouldn't, and the reason is because what most likely would happen is it would fail, or something would happen that it would lose its title, unless it can be reinstated if it did fail.
All right, thank you. Another question regarding the council. Am I inaccurate in characterizing when this license first came to the Assembly initially, that the council's position was basically we don't want another license in this area, but we know that's not realistic, and this is the absolute minimum compromise that we're asking for?
That's correct, yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all.
Thank you. Other questions from Assembly members? Doesn't appear to be. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else wishing to testify on this issue, please come forward. Don't have to raise your hand, just come on up.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, sir.
I've been seeing you for a long time.
It's been a while.
Lyle Anderson. I was born and raised in Anchorage. I'm a little nervous. It takes a lot to say what I got to say tonight. I'm the adult child of an alcoholic. My father and stepmother were convicted of multiple DUIs. Nobody thought too much about stopping them. And in 1981, I'm glad the firefighters are no longer here. I know a number of them still recall. My father shot my stepmother and committed suicide. My father's blood alcohol content was 0.36 and my stepmother's was 0.41. If I didn't learn anything from that, I learned, folks, we are powerless against this. This carding defies common sense. My stepfather, who I'm fortunate is not an alcoholic, I'm sorry, I saw Marky Belts' name here. Close friends of the Belts family, haven't stood here for many years. In any case, he promptly went down with his retired military ID, walked down to the Brown Jug where they have a 100% card rule, which I support if that's what the business wants to do. It's fabulous. It's working great. They're locking up the mouthwash down at Safeway. I think prudent businessmen already know what's required of them. We don't need a law that invades my rights because it's just absolutely hilarious that they would card me, especially since it can be so easily defeated with just about any kind of idea you can provide. I've personally seen a municipal employee carded for booze in a bar show his municipal ID card, and I have a feeling he had these red stripes I keep hearing about. In any case, when you really think about what it takes to keep the people who want the alcohol from getting it, the only place is jail. Or maybe mental incarceration, an API or something along those natures, because we've had a lot of incidents in our cities. We see where people with money can get whatever they want. We can go to the polar extreme on this issue and look at what happened with Michael Jackson. There wasn't anything was going to stop him from getting what he wanted. And I learned this from my alcoholic parents.
Excuse me, let me interrupt you for a minute, if you don't mind. Sir, you can sit down. We're going to get to you, I promise. I don't want to see somebody stand and pass out.
I want to keep my comments, I'm sorry. I wanted to keep my comments short here and stay on my notes here, but we really are powerless. As an adult child of an alcoholic, I struggled with a lot of issues in my life. And when I rolled in the door, I found out that the very programs that some of these offenders are being sentenced to, the first thing they're going to learn when they finally comply is they're going to go in there and they're going to admit they're powerless over it. And I cannot tell you what it did for my life once I finally realized that I was powerless over the decisions that other alcoholics in my life made. I was powerless over my reaction to it until I acknowledged it. And if we want to deal with the alcohol problem in our city, we're not going to do a better job by driving it underground. In fact, we're probably going to create even more tragedy. I feel like this singles people out who are more likely to not have the opportunity to avoid the rules, people who conveniently have an extra ID of some sort, and perhaps provide the type of benefits that I heard the previous gentleman speaking of. And I mean, I've donated a lot of my time and dedication in this community to our children. Really thrilled to see the programs going on that I saw earlier this evening. So when I think about if it could save a child's life, I think about my childhood, and I can tell you that there wasn't any legislation anybody could attempt to weigh into our family with that ever did any good. We were powerless, and until we realized it, none of us got better. I got two brothers. I have one of which still acknowledges nothing and continues to live his life in a shambles. So I'd hope that you would consider that at the end of the day, there really isn't any basis for you to intrude on my privacy. If the people that are hiring to sell liquor can't look at me until I'm old enough to drink, why should there be an automatic presumption I might be trying to defeat the law and have to present an ID? It's an intrusion on me that's not going to serve any public or proper purpose that you folks are associated with. I support zoning decisions that say that you might have a given place that becomes a hot spot. We've seen it so many places in town. Strip clubs, after-hours bars, and gambling joints were probably bigger in the 70s and the early 80s. But I've seen zoning rules fix these problems before. We tore down S&S apartments. We tore down Hollywood apartments, and we can keep on going on. We're trying to deal with homeless. I'm not sure that the red roof is going to do it. It's like building S&S apartments back up. You understand what I'm saying? But we're still trying to combat a disease we cannot win the battle against. Those people have to make the decision. As long as they choose to do irresponsible behaviors in our community, whether it's consuming and driving or consuming or beating their family or whatever it may be, it's going to continue to happen until they choose to admit that they're powerless. There's nothing we can do. If we choose to continue this path that you're choosing, you'll remain codependent. And it's just as bad as being an alcoholic, I can tell you. I've been codependent most of my adult life. So I apologize for going over time. Was a little bit nervous, but anyhow, I've said my say.
It's good to see you again, by the way. Mr. Honeman?
Yeah, I think you'd heard earlier testimony, sir, that, there's an issue. When I was going to high school here at Bartlett, we had an area right outside the front doors for people that smoked, and teenagers, kids, everybody came out with their packs of cigarettes, and nobody, as long as they stayed outside the door, they were at it. But now we're at a point where there's under age 19 is not allowed, and they check ID card for people. I think some places I've seen if you're under age 35, we card you. And how do you address? I mean, there are state statutes and laws that apply to try to, I guess, protect people, not only themselves but the rest of the people in the community here, the society. And how do you look at that parallel there?
I found the previous gentleman's statement humorous because I hadn't really noticed that it was happening at Brown Jug, because if I pull out my credit card and you ask me for my ID card, you're my hero. But the first time I handed cash over and I got asked for ID, and I'm like, excuse me? And I said, surely you're joking. I got enough gray in my beard, you can tell by now, right? I mean, I apologize, I'm not losing my hair. And I didn't understand. I was given a little card and said that they were trying to do 100% compliance in order to appease the assembly. And I asked what was going on, and then I found out that this is what the deal was. And I think that Safeway represents the model for what we need to do. We need to be responsible when we're selling alcohol in our community. We have hot spots all over. There's one down there by 13th across the street from Cars. I think they have a harder time dealing with it than Cars does. Cars is, mouthwash and aftershave. They locked it up. It's a strange thing in our community, but that's the difference. That's what makes a difference. Those people have to go somewhere else. They'll probably go the route. Some will. They always do. They went in the villages when they went dry, and people start drinking squeeze and diesel. Yeah, I mean, we can create worse problems by making alcohol totally unavailable. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? If we keep going down the path, eventually we will end up with a lot more backlash than we ever started with.
We tried that, but just a commentary point, just from my knowledge of the history, these businesses did not take the mouthwash off the shelves voluntarily. They were asked to do so because others, including the police and the community council, noted that this was becoming a problem. So it wasn't like they did it voluntarily. They noticed it proactively on their own. They did it after.
They argue the point. Once they became aware it was a problem, how hard did they argue the point? To the point of needing an ordinance?
No, not
Or I should say a resolution.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez, sir?
No question. I just wanted to say you had no reason to be nervous. You did fine.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Sir?
Thanks a lot, gentlemen, ladies. Vice President, Northeast Community Council, Stewart, G-R-E-N-I-E-R, Grenier. The Community Council voted 11-0 with 2 abstained to request that Brown Jug continue to card everyone. And I found when I went in there and talked to the attendant, she said, "Oh, I support universal carding. It keeps the riffraff out." Somebody suggested here that our council area be allowed to have some kind of ordinance for universal carding. That would be really appreciated. But I think that other council areas would find that certain types of individuals would be migrating to their areas, and they might not appreciate it so much. After they started the universal carding, I did checks, keeping an eye before council meetings, and just general observations. Certain kinds of inebriates did tend to disappear. I'm not sure where they went. The folks who had the IDs and were in the park, they didn't change their habits at all. But what we did find is that when we were picking up the park, Centennial Park, we actually photographed some of the inebriates, and we walked into one of the liquor stores and showed pictures, and the lady said, "Oh, I know those guys." And we said, "Well, look at these guys." And they said, "Okay, we'll trespass them. Next time they come in here, we're going to trespass them." So universal carding has a lot of benefits, and I understand there's going to be an ordinance on this, and I'm very grateful. But I would like Brown Jug in Tecotnu to be like Walmart, a community-minded liquor store. And Walmart, all over the country, cards everybody regardless. And I went to Eagle River, and I went into Walmart, and I sat there and talked with them after I saw somebody who was not allowed to purchase. And that customer walked out of there kind of disgruntled, and I asked him what's going on, and they said, Walmart cards everybody universally. What's the problem? Well, the problem is just looking at the budget. All the money we've seen from Harry Crawford's numbers, about 30% of the police budget is dealing with alcohol issues and the phenomenal costs. You guys want to talk about budget? You need to talk about universal carding. This is just a very small business here. It's just at Cottonu. It's near a high school, and it would be very nice if Brown Jug could just accept this. And I would hope somebody would ask them to bite the bullet. There's nothing unfair about it. They're new. We didn't ask for this store. We didn't want this store. There's a timeline difference between this store and all the other ones in the area. And you guys know we have a whole bunch on Muldoon Road. And now they're shoving some more at the north end. So I would appreciate you guys to really consider this. And really, is it that much of an inconvenience for Brown Jug? No. And let's wait for the referendum. And so, but that's all I have to say.
Ms. Osiander, ma'am?
Stu, when I was at the community council, there was some comment made that the presentation you heard from Brown Jug was that would be a high-end store where they would maybe specialize in wines. And can you talk about that for a second?
I suspect somebody behind me will talk about that, and I suspect they're waiting to talk about that after Brown Jug presents their case. So hopefully, I've noticed in the past that Brown Jug always gets the last word. It would be nice if somebody other than Brown Jug could present after we hear what they have to say. And yes, there were things mentioned in all the spinmeistering about that with regards to no kegs for sale and things like that. And, well, there's a question of good faith on this whole volunteer thing that Mike tried to get. And so hopefully this will all become just history after we have a referendum, because once people see the facts, I think this is going to pass. As far as the ID question the man raised, I agree 100%. It should be legal state ID. And if they want to use a passport, well, if you're alcohol restricted, then the liquor store should have your passport number. And if they catch you, then the person selling the alcohol gets a big $300 bonus, just like they do when they catch somebody 18 or 21 and under.
Anything else, Ms. Osiander?
No, apparently I can ask that question later.
Mr. Gutierrez, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stu, it's been represented that perhaps this is not the hot button issue in the Northeast Community Council area that some of us seem to think that it is, that it's not something that the council really feels that strongly about. What is your, as a council officer, what is your take on that?
Well, as you know, we're struggling with park issues in our area, and we have the inebriates, and lots of us know people who have been killed by drunk drivers. Lots of us are related to people who have been drunk drivers. And as far as getting the people out, how many times do we have to come out? I mean, we've had people here at the, a year ago or whenever, and then it seemed like there were all these meetings. Somebody had a special meeting over here at the other hall, and you weren't there, but I think you called it. People came to that, and my feeling is people assume that you have to show ID when you're going to go buy alcohol, and the fact that it's not required is a surprise to a lot of people. But yeah, there's the argument that some people think it's government stepping too far or something like that, but we're running into a situation where finances are going to be a real important issue, and we know who the problem people are. If we can help them and our society save a lot and just make them have another hurdle to jump to get their fix, it's in our interest. How many times do we have to tell people to come out? Yeah. So I look forward to having a referendum. People who care enough to come out and vote, they'll decide. Anybody who drives home, you want to facilitate another DUI? I'm sure Brown Jug considers the DUI folks an important market, or somebody does. What's the big fuss about? So I'm sorry that the volunteer program didn't work out, but money is more important than other things.
Anything else, Mike?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, thank you very much for coming out this evening, and I want you to know that I truly understand and appreciate your concerns. But I think I heard you say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you wish that Brown Jug was like Walmart, community-minded. Did you say that?
Yes, I did say that.
Right. And I have to say, regardless to how I vote on this particular issue this evening, that Brown Jug is probably, in my opinion, the most community-minded establishment that sells liquor in this community. Set aside the issue that we're dealing with right now. They really are. As a matter of fact, I have a committee that I established, and it's called TBOP, and it stands for Take Back Our Parks. And they happen to be a member of that committee, and the goal of that committee basically is to work with the situation in the Campbell Park area. So I just, for the record, I just had to express my opinion on how community-minded Brown Jug really is, in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, the community council voted 11-0 for universal carding, and it would be appreciated if Brown Jug continued there.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There are no other questions. Appreciate it. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. State your name for the record. Spell your last name.
Hi, Ainsley Phillips, A-I-N-S-L-I-E, Phillips with 2 L's. And I, too, am with Northeast Community Council. I'm pretty distressed to be here tonight. First of all, as was first mentioned by Kevin Smeested, the discrepancy with the AO numbers concerns us greatly tonight, because it was first introduced and noticed to our council as AO 2010-090, to which comments were submitted to the body. Tonight it has AR 210-217. People that wanted to come and testify over this, and if they'd looked it up on the internet, wouldn't have seen the original AO number and are not here. We feel that's pretty disingenuous. We're concerned that this may not be a valid hearing because of that. Secondly, I went back, I was also distressed, I was going to pull the meetings from the November 17th meeting when we did this back in 2009, and since the budget cuts, we no longer have the printed testimony, but I tried to transcribe from the video some of the comments that were made that helped establish this. It is correct, the questions were brought up, does Northeast Community Council not want a liquor store? No, we did not want this liquor store. It was a compromise. As Stuart said, this was the minimum that we would put up with, was at least have it carded. Now they're coming back 6 months later and saying, you guys are picking on us, it's not fair, it's hurting our business. These are some of the comments that have come to the council, and I know you guys have all heard this. So I looked at the testimony. Originally, when the Brown Jug people came to P&Z, they said it was going to be a high-end destination liquor store, not a neighborhood liquor store, and they would be dealing in fine spirits and fine liquor, not catering to the neighborhood-type clientele. No purpose would be served to market less expensive alcohol. They would for profit. And that is in the testimony. They routinely card anyone who appears under 30 or known street people. The other thing that they brought up was what a really good-minded they were, because they bought the license and held on to it for 3 years because they felt that it wasn't a good fit for their business model to market it, to continue it, selling it in its location of the Billick Inn. Well, when they bought it, the Billick Inn was in process of being demolished for Edward Street, which this body purchased, so that was a little disingenuous. Yes, I'm angry. The Director of Operations, O.C. Madden, said that, and he said also that they do everything in our power to prevent sales to people who are a problem in our community. And here they are, less than a year later, coming back and asking you to reduce their inconvenience of having to card people so that they, aren't they're convenience of people. They are advertising keggers in the windows, and I apologize, we took a picture last night, and I apologize, I was going to bring it, but it says we have keggers available. I mean, I don't remember when a keg was a fine wine or spirit. Secondly, the whole process seems like a bait and switch. The community came to this group, this body, in good faith, and we ask you to maintain that good faith with us and help us. Yes, it's a little bit like trying to empty an ocean with a teaspoon. Yes, it's probably not going to stop the public inebriate problem. That's one thing. Mr. Klein said in the comments that the mayor had initiated a task force of 36 people to work on the alcohol problem, and how dare 9 people from the community council think they could do a better job. That's also in the testimony, and I charge you to take 5 minutes and go look at the video. It's in there. Well, it's got to start somewhere, and maybe you should ask the family of the lady from the Phillips lady, no relation, whose child no longer has a father, whose mother is permanently crippled for life after 5 DWIs. It's got to start somewhere, and this is the place for it to start.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions from Assembly members? Harriet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for coming, Ms. Phillips. I am looking at the video right now. It's been going on for about 25 minutes back in November 17th. So I don't think it would be possible for us to take a break and listen to that now. But I take you at face value about that testimony. I, too, am concerned about the lack of coordination in the numbers. The case number in the Planning Department is 090. The ordinance before us is 217. That it doesn't make any sense, and I think this community has been hoodwinked into thinking there was a hearing on something tonight when it's not properly numbered. And I think since we're in the business of numbers and dollars and figures, we need to be getting those numbers right so that the community is fairly treated. And I don't know what we're supposed to do with this if the public notice was not properly given for the proper ordinance. Thank you.
I'll ask our legal counsel. Is there a problem with the numbering on the ordinance in front of us?
There's no ordinance in front of you. There's a resolution.
Okay.
And I'm having difficulty following what the issue that the speakers have mentioned. There was a notice published on the agenda, I believe, 2 meetings ago, that gave notice that on tonight the Assembly would consider. But I don't understand what I'm shown this number, but I'm not understanding what this.
Mr. Chairman?
I don't recognize this document, so I can't tell. There's a resolution that is in front of the Assembly now. That was published. There's an AIM that was published on June 22nd that went through the entire history of this, that was called a special notice of intent to amend AR 2009-277. AR 2009-277 is the Assembly's conditional use approval of this, and so I don't even understand what this document is. Additional information, Assembly meeting item. Is this a?
Mr. Chairman.
Is this the backup to what?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I might be able to lend
Mr.
some.
Honeman.
Yeah, I didn't receive the backup.
The backup documentation does show, through the chair, that it's apparently a planning department case number, which is 2010-090, and I'm not sure if that is just the fact of it. It's a rider to this resolution. That's what it appears to be. But
well, if it's from the planning department, it's not one of ours because ours is what's on here.
So,
Okay, Mr. Honeman, any questions for her?
Yeah, I guess real quick, like Ainsley, I just wanted to, and I appreciate you being here for it. We heard some commentary about possibility of either a northeast area or east side. Perhaps I don't think we can pick an ordinance and actually say it specifically per licenses and conditional use license restrictions. recognizing that this particular license was granted with the condition that they do 100% compliance ID checks and license checks. Is it your intent, or I don't know if you can speak for the Assembly or for the Northeast Community Council, is it your intent that absent an ordinance that makes it law, a required law, that as the licensees come up for renewal in the Northeast area, that you would be requiring this this condition on all licensees, not just on Brown Jug? I mean, is this something that you guys are considering too? I heard some discussion.
Absolutely, and further, we want to work with the Federation of Community Councils to make this citywide. I've talked to Harry Crawford about this, and one of the comments that have been brought up is, well, how if they, getting around having the driver's license check with the red stripe, then they've used the alternative ID, and it causes all these other problems. Well, then you'd go to a database system, which there is a printed list of people who are alcohol restricted, and if the person trying to purchase the alcohol could not produce a state ID with this on it, then the clerk would be advised to pull up that list. And again, like we mentioned, if they find someone that's alcohol restricted, they get a reward. It's in their benefit. We had testimony on November 19th that a liquor store clerk said it helps her business. It helps her do her job responsibly by having these restrictions. It's a no-brainer. Yes, we are not going to stop with this. We're not picking on Brown Jug or Tecotton Commons. We're trying to stop a very real problem and make this for the benefit of everybody.
Thank you. And I just wanted to comment, too, that as Ms. Gray Jackson pointed out, that, and I've said it before to the industry and to this particular retailer, I believe they are a standard bearer in this community as far as community-minded. I think they are taking the lead on a lot of initiatives, and I do laud them for their efforts at Brown Jug. But I do recognize that this was a condition they accepted as a condition of getting this license to operate, and I have a problem with where we're at now, but it's simple to me. They're asking to have it relieved from their process, and that's what we're hearing on.
No other questions. Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to testify on this issue? Before you testify, hold on for a minute. Mike, what I'd like to do is continue this to our next meeting. We'll pick it back up. That way we can get it straight as to which one people thought they were testifying on.
I would appreciate that, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Starr, can you agree to that, too?
Yeah, that's good. And just remind them if they testified the first time around, they won't be able to testify again. So.
And I believe that's why the chairman is making
Seriously, I'm asking you not to testify right now.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. It's just, they just use the planning department number when you submit online. The community council used the planning department number.
Debbie, I mean, it looks like it's all right with both sides to postpone until the next meeting.
All right, but would you mind if we just allow Rhonda to speak?
No, I don't mind.
Or
Rhonda?
Julia, whoever.
Through the chair, Ms. Osander, it looks like the number, the case number that's in the information that you received from the community council is the wrong number. The resolution that was prepared by Assembly Council includes the correct planning number, and it was a 2009 number. I don't know where they got the 2010 number.
Okay, thank you.
Well, this is, like I said, both sides, talking to Mike, talking to Bill Starr, they're both willing to wait till our next meeting. So I would like to hold off a decision till the next meeting, if that's all right with both of you guys, just to make absolutely sure.
We'll get the motion after Mr. Madden.
Okay, go ahead. Sir, if you want to.
If that's the case, I'd like to wait until the next meeting.
Motion.
I move to continue the public hearing to August 17.
Second.
Second. Ask unanimous. Say no objection.
Mr. Chairman.
17th.
Before we move on from that, it is very important, I think, to note that while there is confusion over the numbering, there was, in my mind, absolutely no intent to do any hoodwinking at all. Confusion happens. It does. We've all been here long enough to realize that things like that happen. The confusion exists, and I think that's why it's worth our time to put this off until the next meeting. But I don't believe that there was any nefarious intent or any intent at all involved in that. I think it's just an honest mistake.
I don't think there was either, and I appreciate both of you, both you, Mr. Gutierrez, and you, Mr. Starr, just taking 2 weeks to our next meeting so we can deal with this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to change the order of the day to move down to item 19 executive sessions prior to taking up our final item 14H.
Is there a second on that, please? What we've got is some information on legal issues that we need to have this discussion. Has to be done in executive session.
And the reason for that...
It's a request of the administration.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead, ma'am.
All right. I'd like to know the specific reason for the executive session.
Yes.
Sorry. Involves litigation related to...
Ms. Westover is going to give the background on that, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor. Rhonda?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Municipal Attorney's Office has received information, 2 items that need to be discussed in executive session. One has to do with pending litigation, and one has to do with a matter which could adversely affect the finances of the municipality.
Okay. Second.
Is there any objection? If saying none, we should go into executive session.
Yeah, before we do it, Mr. Chairman,
Glenn?
just for the information of the few who are left, and the television, I'm conflicted out of participating in matter 14H, so I won't be coming back when this is over. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
We'll be back shortly. Oh, we're going to the back room. Executive session. We're back in session.
Mr. Chairman, I do this one.
Whichever of the two of you want to do it.
I'd move that the record of the executive session be maintained confidentially until the litigation discussed therein is resolved to satisfaction of the Municipal Attorney's Office.
Debbie?
Second.
Okay. It's moved and seconded. Rhonda, did you have any comment you needed to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to let the Assembly know that the pending case in front of the RCA, which we call the Musa case, the final arguments were completed late yesterday afternoon, and we would expect a decision from the RCA sometime before the end of October.
Okay. It's unanimous consent on the motion in front of us. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that item was passed. We are now on to item 14H.
Good night, Mr. Chairman.
Good night, sir. You're conflicted out on this one. Go and have a good night.
And you as well. Good luck.
You can come back when we deal with the motion to adjourn if you want.
You can phone it in if you'd like.
Okay. Next item in front of us, item 14H.
You can.
Item 14H is ordinance AO 2010-52, an ordinance to determine the fee for a non-exclusive utility easement for fiber optic cable and related facilities granted to ACS Cable Systems across HOB parcels 4-033A, 4-033B, and 4-034. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record and spell your last name, please. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing none, the public hearing on this item is closed. Now, Rhonda, we now move into 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Rhonda? I'm sorry, not Rhonda. Julia?
Mr. Chair, from the Department of Law, Ralph DeWare will be presenting the argument on this matter.
Okay. Sir? Which one, sir?
Well, I just was wondering what was a conflict.
For Mr. Flynn.
Oh. He lives in the area?
No.
He lives in the area?
Sorry. His wife is an attorney in this item.
Okay, I just didn't hear it
No,
stated.
that was the problem. It was the last meeting when we dealt with this.
Okay.
His wife's been a treaty record for a long time, and he's got a conflict.
Yeah,
sir.
thanks for reminding me.
Thank you. Who's presenting for the city? Come on forward.
Mr. Chair,
Set this for 5 minutes.
my name is Ralph DeWare. I will be presenting for the municipality. However, according to stipulation that we've reached with ACS, ACS will make the first presentation for
Okay.
its council.
Fine, sir. Not a problem. You have 5 minutes, as does the city, and then 3 minutes for rebuttals, so we'll get there. They're setting the timer.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Leonard Steinberg, S-T-E-I-N-B-E-R-G. I am General Counsel for Alaska Communications Systems, ACS. I appreciate your permitting me a few minutes of your time to help resolve a fee dispute between ACS and the municipality's Heritage Land Bank. To put this issue in context, in 2008, ACS invested more than $100 million to build and turn up a new and thoroughly modern fiber optic cable connecting Alaska with high-speed and high-capacity connections to the lower 48 states. This facility significantly enhances Anchorage's economy by ensuring connectivity via diverse routing. The cable lands near Point Warrenzoff and transit municipal land near the airport. The question at hand is, what should ACS pay for a non-exclusive easement over that municipal land? This body adopted an ordinance in March of 2008 that established the fee as at least fair market use fee value. 2 appraisals have been completed. The first appraisal, prepared by Mr. Alan Olson, established a fee of approximately $134,000. The second appraisal, prepared by Mr. Brian Bethard at Blacksmith, Bethard and Carlson, established a fee of approximately $31,000, a difference of approximately $103,000. You might wonder how these appraisals can be so far apart. The answer is relatively simple. Mr. Olson believed he was asked to determine a use fee regardless of market. In other words, he did not think that market played a role in the determination of his use fee. Mr. Bethard thought very differently. He thought that there was a market for use fees, and he went out and determined what the market for use fees was. To put a little finer point on it, Mr. Olson made adjustments to rates paid in actual transactions to reflect what he thought they ought to be. For example, Mr. Olson believes there should be a higher rate for easements in urban areas than in rural areas. But if you go out and collect data on what parties have actually agreed to and what they actually pay on easements, you won't find a distinction between urban and rural rates. There is generally just one rate. In Mr. Olson's appraisal, for example, he relies on a easement between ACS and the Alaska Railroad, which he says is about $2.12 per linear foot in urban areas. But if you go look at this agreement, since my company is party to this agreement, I'm familiar with it, the rate is actually 63 cents per linear foot, with no distinction between urban and rural rates. The $2.12 per linear foot rate cited by Mr. Olson is one that he made up by assuming that the railroad has a normal fee of 50 cents per linear foot that he applied to rural areas, and then he just solved an equation to figure out what it must be for urban areas and came up with $2.12 per linear foot. Frankly, we don't think that this is what the Assembly meant when it set a standard of a fair market use fee value. In contrast with the approach that used by Mr. Olson, Mr. Bethard looked at what other parties were actually paying for similar easements and arrived at his estimate of 55 cents per linear foot as the correct determination. Now, most, if not all of you, have probably purchased a home, and you know how appraisals of market are done. The idea is to establish value based on what others pay, not based on what someone thinks they should pay. Now, your home values may be based on a fair market value, and this easement is based on the market for use fee values, but either way, the idea is to evaluate what others pay and come up with a comparable number. Now, the Assembly did say that the easement fee should be at least the fair market value, and some might assert that this gives the municipality the freedom to charge whatever they want. I assert that was not the intent. If the Assembly wanted that, it could have said, charge what you want, but it did not.
Thank you, sir. Now we've got the city. The way this is supposed to work, letter I've got from our council is each council has 5 minutes each side, and then they come in for 3 minutes rebuttal. After that, then we can entertain assembly questions. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair, my name is Ralph Duerre, representing the municipality. Duerre spelled D-U-E-R-R-E. ACS approached the city for a fiber optic cable easement in December of 2007. It was under a tight construction schedule. The environmental assessment was performed, the appraisal was ordered, and then this assembly approved the easement. The easement was approved because the assessment or the appraisal had not yet come in at not less than fair market value use fee value, fair market use fee value. The appraisal did come in at $134,200. That was too high for ACS, despite this $100 million project. And an agreement was worked out with ACS that they could proceed with the construction schedule, provided we signed the easement and the $134,000 was paid. But a memorandum of agreement was reached with ACS to allow them to go out and get a second appraisal to determine if that appraisal came in differently than the first appraisal by Mr. Olson. The Heritage Land Bank director would consider that and in his discretion may adjust the easement fee. The ACS did secure a second appraisal, and it came in, as Mr. Steinberg said, at $31,000. That's $103,000 difference. The first appraisal came in at about $1.90 a linear foot and 19 cents per square foot. 19 cents per square foot. The second appraisal came in quite a bit lower, 5 cents per square foot. 5 cents. The HLB director interviewed both appraisers, understood what their approaches to appraisals were, and then compared their appraisals with a number of other transactions involving easements with the railroad, with the municipality, with Mental Health Land Trust, determined all of those comparables to be in the neighborhood of 15 cents per square foot to 19 to 25 to 35 cents, up to 75 cents, and as high as two recent transactions between the municipality and ACS at $99 per square foot, not 19 cents. So the HLB director looked at all these and tried to determine which is more correct. And as I say, we talked with both appraisers. Mr. Olson placed primary emphasis on the ACS easement from Whittier to Anchorage, Anchorage to Eielson Air Force Base as the primary comp. But that, as Mr. Leonard said, that's at 63 cents a foot for a primarily rural 440-mile easement. When adjustments were made to that based upon the urban area, based upon the railroad's scheduled rates at 50 cents a square foot, he mathematically determined, based upon actual transaction, that the urban rate for not a 25-foot easement but only a 15-foot easement was $2.12. He bracketed that with an actual transaction involving the Mental Health Lands Trust down in Moose Pass. Mental Health Lands Trust had scheduled rates, urban and rural. They made the dichotomy between urban and rural. If you reduce the Mental Health Land Trust easements from 50 feet down to the market transaction down in Moose Pass, you get $1.20 per linear foot for a rural transaction. The actual transaction was 40 cents a square foot, 1/3 of the scheduled amount. Mr. Olson considered that actual transaction in determining his appraised value of the $1.90 a square foot or 19 cents a square foot. So to listen to Mr. Steinberg say that Mr. Olson determined his use fee regardless of market, or thought what it ought to be rather than what it actually was in the marketplace, is not quite correct. He used an actual transaction involving the railroad, and he used an actual transaction involving Mental Health Land Trust down in Moose Pass.
You're done, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now let me read you this letter for Assembly members. Julia sent this to me, and I appreciate it. She was up till 1:24, I think, in the morning, or at least that's when I got the last message from her. It says the Assembly does not take additional testimony from staff members. The Assembly does not take new evidence of adjudication. The Assembly has been requested to hear the parties' arguments before interrupting with questions. This is a dispute resolution forum in lieu of judicial avenues. There is no appeal to court. The Assembly's action is final. Sir, go ahead. You've got 3 minutes. You've got to set it back to 3.
Thank you. With all due respect to the city, I do take issue with the statements that my colleague across the aisle just made. If you would like to refer to some of the exhibits that were submitted to you, I would just like to call your attention to Mr. Olson's appraisal on pages 8 and 9. He refers to specific actual easement transactions, and you can see that he has a list there that basically runs between 25 cents and 13 cents and 63 cents. Mr. Bethard has a very similar list on pages 37, I believe, and 38 of his report. So I would just call your attention to those. It's a very similar set of numbers. What the Moose Pass easement that Mr. Durer referred to is at 40 cents a linear foot, not the $1.20 that Mr. Olson calculated it as, and what the Alaska Railroad rate is at 63 cents, not the $2.12 that Mr. Olson calculated. So I would just call your attention to what those actual numbers are going forward. Last thing I'd just like to say is ACS is not looking for any special privileges here. We're not looking for anything out of the ordinary. What we're asking is to be treated like other companies and other parties, and we just want to be treated fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If you'll sit down, then we'll let the other council come up, and then we'll open up to Assembly questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to focus the Assembly on what we're doing here tonight. And we are now trying to reconcile the two appraisals based upon a memorandum of agreement that was reached by the parties back in 2008. ACS had the opportunity to obtain a second appraisal. The HLB director would consider the appropriate fee, and within the HLB director's discretion, may adjust the fee. I submit that the HLB director considered all the evidence, considered the two appraisals, looked at other appraisals for comparable values, found that the $103,000 difference, or the 5 cent per square foot determination by Blacksmith, was just too far to be reconciled with the other appraisals, and therefore exercised his discretion reasonably. I request that the Assembly support the decision of the HLB director in determining the easement fee. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now open this up for questions from Assembly members. Mr. Burke, sir, you're in the line.
I guess my question would, there's a indication here that the appraisers are to receive the same instructions. Is there any dispute as to whether from either party as to whether the appraisers, the two separate appraisers, received the same instructions?
I don't believe there was any material difference in the instructions. The term that was actually used in the ordinance, fair market use fee value, turns out to be actually somewhat of a unique term. And fair market value is common, use fee is common, but putting it together is a little unusual. And as a consequence, when Mr. Bethard did his analysis, he looked at both a fair market value and a use fee. He calculated both. But he did do the same thing, I believe, that was asked of Mr. Olson. And any further comment?
I think despite the term used in this Assembly ordinance, fair market use fee value, I think both appraisers understood the appraisal concept and reached the same, or had the same methodology.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ms. Osiander, ma'am?
I was going to ask that same question, particularly because there's that email that's listed in the packet that specifically says use value only. It doesn't include the term. But you're both acknowledged that that was followed.
Just to help out on that, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
If you look at the date of that
January
email,
28th, I think.
I believe it preceded the Assembly's decision on the ordinance. So the term fair market use fee value shows up in the Assembly's ordinance that was passed in March 18th, I believe, of 2008.
Okay.
And the email preceded that, and you are correct, it does not refer to market. But the appraisals itself is dated April 1. So the appraisal was done several weeks after the Assembly's ordinance was adopted.
All right. I also have a question about the ACS appraisal, if I could, and I guess it's to both of you. The question is, on page 37 of the ACS appraisal, there's some language that seems to indicate that the appraiser believed user fee equals going rate, and I took that to mean that he believed there was some accord with the rates that were published and the rates that were finally in place. Do you see the section that?
I do.
Okay. Do you dispute or do you differ with my interpretation?
Again, Mr. Chair, responding to the question, I believe that Mr. Bethard thought that use fee is similar but not identical, as he articulates, but I do believe that he believes that there is a market for use fees and attempted to do an appraisal based on what he thought the market for those use fees are.
Then why would he say that it's this user fee? I have to find the sentence, I guess. That isn't how I interpreted the page. So, Mr. Jarrett, do you agree with this other gentleman?
I think if you go down in that paragraph, and as I read Mr. Bethard's appraisal, I think he uses the same appraisal concept.
Okay.
He struggled to get there with the terminology, but eventually reached the concept of use fee, as he calls it, or use value, also referred to value in use. And I think those terms do have definitions under the appraisal industry, and I think that's the approach he followed. Now, the first 30 or so pages is off on a different methodology.
Yeah, I caught that. Yeah.
And if I may just clarify, I believe that Mr. Bethard in that section was also distinguishing the use fee analysis from the market value analysis.
Okay.
Anything else, Debbie?
Just one more. And then I do have several comments I'd like to make. Shoot, I lost it. Just I'll yield and then come back.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Gray-Jackson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question for either one of these attorneys, but if it's appropriate, I would like to ask the question to maybe one of my now colleagues who were sitting on this body when the ordinance was approved, if it's appropriate. My basic question is, what was the Assembly's intent in stating fair market use Well, I need to understand that if possible.
Chris, were you here when this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chris, do you want to answer that question, or Jennifer?
I don't recall the specifics of the fair market use fee. I think there was certainly a rush to get this through. I think the administration at that time was very interested in kind of accelerating this. So,
Jennifer, anybody else? Debbie?
There was no attention paid to it. It just came to us as the document. The only thing that I had paid attention to was in the past on these kind of things was that we made a determination the easement was of no marketable value because of the requirement in the charter. But there was no discussion. It was prepared that way, Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Ms. Ostander.
Debbie, we're back down to you.
Well, since I can't find the question, I guess I'm just going to give a little bit of comment, if I could, sir.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I basically think that there's some merit in both sides of this decision, of this position. Mr. Olson's appraisal was interesting because he initially went to some book that I guess is definitive on the subject and defined user fees pretty specifically. As stated, both of the appraisers looked at tables of other companies that charge fees, and I believe that they both looked at what was charged and also in some cases the cost fees and actually also what was negotiated. I also want to point out that all of them talk about the fact that since this is a 20-year lease, you need to have some cost factoring because these lease rates costs are increasing regularly. They also, and I believe this is true, talked about the scarcity of industrial property, and I think that personally there is a differentiation between the value of land in urban and rural areas, which Mr. Olson stresses more than the ACS appraiser whose name I've forgotten. The other thing that I guess I thought was interesting was the discussion about the Moose Pass and the discussion about the ACS leases that were negotiated fairly recently. So I actually have a proposal to make, but I'll hold it until other people make their comments. If
Okay. Thank you, Debbie.
Sure.
Any other comments from assembly members? No one's in the... Mr. Starr, sir.
Well, either council can ask. The way I read on page 9 of Mr. Olson's summary, he talks about comparable market rates in an ACS placement, as it says, and I guess I want to make sure I'm reading this. It talks about 30 miles within urban areas in Anchorage and Fairbanks is calculated to be $2.36 per linear foot, adjusted for a 15 wide to $2.12. Is that current market rates that ACS is paying in the Fairbanks area in Anchorage for cable locates?
Mr. Chair, if I may respond, that is not what ACS pays on its easement that runs through Anchorage and through Fairbanks is 63 cents per linear foot. That's the only rate ACS pays throughout the entire length of the easement it has with the Alaska Railroad Corporation. 63 cents is it. There is no distinction in the real world.
Versus, and he's trying to introduce the concept, in your opinion, then of rural versus urban. It's, to your case, it's 63 cents whether you run through the woods or through a street.
That's what the actual world is. I can respect the view that perhaps there should be a different rate for urban and rural areas. But if you go out and you try to collect data on what different parties actually pay, you don't see that in the data of what's actually being paid today. And the question that I would pose for you is, should ACS be treated differently than our competitors and than other parties who have easements?
I'm happy to answer that later, but I guess the point is the distinction between urban versus rural is what he was trying to make there. And if your clarity is that it really shouldn't be 236 because it's 63 across the whole length, that's the answer. What I also need to know, and I don't know who answers this, is it exclusive use in that ACS doesn't have subletting requirements or subletting opportunities for that dedicated easement?
These are non-exclusive easements.
Non-exclusive. So who controls that then, ACS or HLB?
Well, HLB would control it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Starr, if I might. That 63 cents a linear foot is for a 443,000 25-foot wide easement. When you go to compare that easement going through 430 miles of rural area to an urban 10-foot wide easement, you cannot simply, as Mr. Bethard did, take 63 cents as a comparable. You have to make adjustments. That's how we reached the $2.12 based purely upon the actual market transaction with ACS and then the railroad's scheduled rates at 50 cents. And the math works out to the penny.
I get it. Is there other uses allowed in that easement too, that the one that he used in comparison here?
Yeah, I don't know. You might ask Mr. Steinberg on that.
Is there? I mean, can a fuel pipeline be laid along the same easement in the right of way for the railroad?
I believe there are other facilities in the same area, but and of course the ACS facility is subsurface, so it doesn't do anything with regard to surface detail.
Do you maintain your own easements in that, or does the railroad clear them for you?
In the railroad area, we do maintain easements, but there are many other parties in the railroad easements as well.
How about this HLB land? Who maintains the easement vegetation in that one?
Oh, I believe that is done by HLB. We're subsurface and we don't do anything on the surface.
But it's a 15-foot wide or 10-foot wide gash through the trees in a lot of situations. Who keeps those gone?
I don't think that it is of any issue to ACS. I don't believe it's in our policy to do that, or it's in the expectation of the easement that we would take care of the surface.
So you're saying HLB would, or you don't need it maintained?
I don't think there's any maintenance that has to be done. Certainly not on our behalf.
Just the manhole probably at the end.
I mean, if there may be at some point in the future a catastrophic earthquake, we might have to access it to repair it. But other than that, we don't access that.
Thanks.
Mr. Honeman, sir.
Yeah, just for ACS or either way, what facility or structures are actually in it? Is it vaults? Is it a series of vaults, or are you actually blowing it through, or is it entrenching it, or how does that work?
There is a vault at the beach end, and then there's another vault at the far end. But underneath there's just it was trenched, and there's a conduit, and fiber optic cable lies in the conduit.
And that's the entire. I mean, are there any PEDs that come up in between, or?
To be honest, I do not know the answer. There may be an access point, but I do not know that for sure.
Okay.
Thank you. There are other people on the assembly in the queue right now. So, Julia, question for you. Our next course of action, line 21, should be to set the dollar amount. Is that correct? And then work our way through this.
Mr. Chair, the Assembly can set a dollar amount. Okay. I think that if the Assembly has several options, I think, in the way to do that. The way that the appraisers did that was to set a rate for the linear foot and the square foot and then add them together and do some present value adjustments to come to a lump sum figure. The Assembly can set a lump sum figure. The standard, as been discussed here, is at least this concept of a fair market value. So you wouldn't want anything that you set to be less than the lesser of the two appraisers. And I note for the Assembly that the appraisal that ACS obtained in its final amount wasn't quite long enough in its dimension. So
would take some calculation to do that.
I have a question.
Thank you, Julia.
To that
Mr.
point,
Starr?
are you talking about the 5,900 and some linear feet versus the 6,600 in the other appraisal, or are you talking about that?
Through the chair, yes, Mr. Starr.
Thanks. And what is the exact number on the 59? I can't find that readily. It's 5936, or what was it?
Second.
I couldn't find it again. I saw it read it once. I'm sorry for not knowing where it is
I
again.
on page 39, or it's numbered page 39 of Exhibit N.
You just tell me what the number is.
It's listed in that appraisal as the linear easement, linear feet would be 5,297 linear feet, and that's a bit short.
Okay, thank you.
It's the wrong number.
Thank you.
Point of information on that.
Ms. Osiander?
I was looking at page 9 of the Olson appraisal, and that lists 6,635.6 linear feet.
Right, that's my point, is there's a discrepancy in what they think the length is.
I believe that both council will agree that the
Julia, you're breaking up on the microphone.
What do you guys think in measures?
Mr. Chair, if I may address this.
Go ahead, sir.
In the short brief that I submitted to the Assembly in footnote 3, I noted the different lengths that were in the different appraisals, 6,635 for Mr. Olson, 5,297 for Mr. Bethard. But I also noted that subsequent, as the project was completed, there was an as-built survey, and the as-built survey itself calculated an even shorter distance of 5,198 linear feet.
Is that the one that Centec did, or who did the?
I believe that it was done by Centec.
I would note that the actual easement that's been recorded back in 2008 recites 6,636.6 feet. That's the actual easement.
And that was the agreement number 2 that you signed?
That was the actual easement that was signed right after the March 18th Assembly and after the appraisal came in.
Is that all, Mr. Starr?
That's all right now. Thank you.
Debbie, coming back to you, ma'am.
I was going to suggest that for simplicity's sake, we look at the square foot because it's fairly simple then. One is 19 cents per square foot, and the other is a nickel a square foot. The difficulty if you get into lineal foot is you've got some kind of a width thing for the manhole at first this was 15 feet, then it was 10 feet, and then you've got that manhole thing to add to it. So it just seemed simpler to me to look at the 19 cents versus the 5 cents and come up with something. Okay. And I have something I'd like to suggest to the body.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Right.
I'm looking for something on line 21. And there's a little block that says 2B.
Well,
I'm looking for something for that,
okay,
ma'am.
I was going to suggest 15 cents a square foot. And my rationale is that, to me, after reading both appraisals, the Olson appraisal seemed to make more sense to me. Additionally, I believe, as we've been working through Title 21, that our use of properties, particularly properties around the airport, are going to grow increasingly more valuable. And then thirdly, I would like to see, frankly, utilities paying more of their fair share of things in this city. And that's just a policy statement for me. One of the things to buttress that we've done in Title 21 is to allow more landscaping on utility easements because, in my view, utilities need to pay their fair share. I do think, though, that ACS does have some point, so I wasn't going to suggest that we stick with the full 19 cents because they do offer some, I think, fairly persuasive arguments that there have been negotiated leases regularly that were far less than this. So that's my suggestion. So I guess, do you want it as a motion, sir, or how do you want to do it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I move that we set the 15 cents a square foot value.
Okay, motion in front of us is on the 15 cents per square foot. Mr. Starr, sir?
They can work it out.
Ms. Osiander, are you actually proposing then to raise the fee?
No, the fee is 19 cents, as I understood it, from one appraiser, and 5 cents from the other appraiser. So basically, I'm lowering a little what HLB wants.
I thought it was 13 cents a square foot under the current agreement at $13,271 a foot.
Could I get
a year.
clarification on that?
No, if you work through the various computations, it'll work its way down to 19 cents per square foot and 5 cents rounded.
And so, did you do the math on the linear? What is it linear? Because I was doing the math lineal.
But the linear foot would be $1.90 under one appraisal, $1.90 per linear foot, and 55 cents on the second appraisal.
What is it under Ms. Osiander's 19 cents a square foot then?
Oh, boy.
I was
Can't do
going
that.
to let staff figure that one out.
Mr. Starr, sir?
No, just wanted to know the math.
Mr. Starr, what was most helpful to me was the work that was done on page 9 of the
And that's the one I'm scratching all over as well. My challenge with the square footage is that it makes the assumption that it's going to be sort of exclusive use or dedicated use only for their benefit for a long time. And linear square foot runs seem to make a lot more sense. That's when you install utilities, they charge you by the lineal foot. They speak to that as a ratepayer and more of the layman's speak. It's more lineal square footage or lineal run language than it is square foot traditionally. So I'm hesitant to go down that path, or we can do the math and compare it over to lineal. I don't mind that math.
The math will go either way. You can start at square, go to linear, or vice versa. We can do it either way.
And I just want to emphasize that the Olson appraisal does not talk about it being exclusive.
I'm not saying that it's exclusive. All I'm saying is that the use, your statements earlier were that the land is valuable and landscaping, the easements and all the other things, that's very well true, but we're not predicating HLB from doing anything with the land. Whoever buys the land may need to know there's a cable underneath it, but, short of a, parking garage or something that may have to relocate the cable or something, I don't know what the land developable is, but it's probably not going to see a high-rise apartment building over there.
Agreed.
So.
Is that all, Mr. Starr?
I'm still looking for the lineal number as it equates to Debbie's. I can't do the math. Sorry. It's too big. So I was really going to just take the lineal $2 a square foot and counter with a motion that takes the $2 a square foot and the 63 cents a square foot and divide that in half and come up with a proposed rate of 131 a lineal foot times the 66 as recorded. And I was headed that direction, but I'll yield to the discussion with Ms. Osiander as it's on the floor.
Mr. Honeman?
I guess that's what I was looking for, was what does it come out to dollar-wise? What's the math looking at? Because I guess thinking more simpler, I was thinking more along the line of splitting the difference between the two, for lack of, just ringing in as an easement. So
split the baby, huh?
And that's where my easement discussion with the linear foot comes from at 131 times the 6635. But I'll hold for a minute.
Thank you. Questions from other Assembly members? Comments? Well, you guys have the direction.
Allison, are you able to do that?
So I'm looking at which numbers you're asking about exactly. In terms of this, you're looking at square footage?
The question was how much, if it's 15 cents per square foot, his question was how much would that be per lineal foot?
It's times the 99,534, isn't it?
And I believe it would have to be with a 6,000 lineal foot because that's what the easement was, I think.
Ms. Osiander, through the chair, there's a discrepancy in the linear foot. According to the as-built, Mr. Steinberg has indicated the linear feet at 5,198, our 6,635 is on the easement of document. So there is a discrepancy in the linear feet. It's difficult to here decide what the square foot number would be based upon that difference in linear feet. So I would prefer, my preference would be that the assembly come to a round number.
They want a round number. Debbie?
You know,
You have a round
if
number
you
you can
want to
give 'em?
go in between the two, then go between 19 and 5.
Yeah.
Again, I want to stress that, to me, the Olson is more compelling, and there's some strong rationale for it. So I'm not going to be comfortable going right in the middle, personally. So that's why I proposed 15, and I guess that's the motion on the floor.
It is currently, ma'am.
Thank you.
Julia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to clarify what I understood Mr. Maynard to be requesting the Assembly to do.
I heard him.
Okay, so the Assembly has before them two rounded up numbers of 134,200 and another number of 31,000 plus or minus something. So you have a $100,000 difference between those two numbers. And so instead of working down to the linear and the square foot methodology are ways to eventually get to what HLB policy requires, which is a lump sum upfront number. And so the calculation requires not only confirmation of the probably as-built easement, but also then a net present value calculation that takes it back. So I think that that's difficult for the Assembly or Allison to do here. And instead, you have the advantage of having two appraisers who went through that methodology and gave you a range. And maybe it would be better to think about how to place it within that range instead of backing it all back down to tiny little numbers and projecting it back out and then doing the net present value and trying to have it calculate exactly.
Thank you, Julia. Mr. Burt, sir? We have 15 cents a square foot. It's a motion in front of us.
I had a question. Is this can this easement be moved if need be? I didn't remember seeing that in the.
Gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to respond. I'm not sure I understand your question. There are facilities that are buried underneath the ground in the easement. So
it becomes necessary to use the land for some alternative purpose. Then who sustains the cost to relocate the utility?
If there was a relocation, I don't know, and Mr. Guerrero, do you have a response to that?
The easement was granted for a 20-year period with a 10-year renewal. I suspect that if we required some other use that required displacement, the municipality would probably have to incur that cost.
It actually ties up that piece of real estate for that amount of time. Okay. Thank you.
Anything on the 15 cent square foot, Mr. Burt?
I personally, with all this calculation and stuff, I'd be more inclined just to pick a number. If you get, $120,000 maybe is let's find something and run with it and not worry about all the calculations.
Thank you, Mr. Birch. Julia, anything else? You're on the list.
Through the chair, thank you. Through the chair, just to clarify something that may help Mr. Birch's question about moving the easement. The Assembly, in passing the original resolution, the original ordinance, which was AO 2008-38, went ahead and made the finding at HLB's request that it is the finding of the Assembly this easement is without substantial value to the municipality.
Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie?
Mr. Chairman, based on this conversation, I'd like, with the consent of the body, to withdraw the motion that I originally made and instead to substitute a lump sum of $100,000.
Second.
Okay. Second agreed to that, ma'am.
Thank
So we're
you.
back to $100,000.
Yes, sir.
Discussion from assembly members on the motion for $100,000.
That, I just want to add that that's $34,200 less than the city had asked for.
And they've already put the money on deposit, I'm told.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Honeman?
Well, that gets it pretty close to the area where we were at initially when I was talking about splitting it, or in the middle there. It's pretty close. I mean, it's a little higher than that figure, but I came up to about 84,000, somewhere around there. So that's acceptable for me.
Mr. Starr, sir?
Well, I'm challenged by the as-built summaries, and that's a fairly scientific way of calculating on how much property they're actually using. So we had 6635 was what they thought they were going to use based on some drawings, but they're using significantly less than that. So if you split it in the difference, as Mr. Honeman says, it's actually 82,737. And to me, a lower number than Ms. Osiander's also would give them, that's a split the difference between the high and the low, split the difference. And again, with Ms. Osiander's logic on the valuing, that's great. This lower number, in my opinion, would give them some credit for the reduced lineal foot as the as-built would show. So I'm not in support of Ms. Osiander's with the idea that we bring it down a little bit more to split the middle, accommodate the reduced space, and would suggest a different number.
Okay. Harriet, on $100,000?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm kind of in agreement with $100,000. When Ms. Osiander suggested 15 cents, bringing it down from 19 cents, that's 79% of 19 cents. And if you multiply 134,200 times 79%, you get about $106,000. So I'm pretty close to the 100. I think I'm okay with your $100,000 suggestion.
Can we call the question?
We've only got one other person, there's Mr. Starr. If I could go to him, sir, if you don't mind.
We don't.
Bill, then we'd like to have a vote.
I would too, but we can't charge lineal feet of $2 and some dollars. I mean, $2.12 a linear foot is too much money for an easement of a cable that's not incriminating on anything. We're going to discourage business, or we're going to discourage utilities from wanting to do business with the city or do it on city land. They're going to go to private sector industry, and that may be all well and good, but we still have the responsibility to maximize valuations. And if we sort of stick it to them with a $2.12 summary or bring it down to that in a linear foot, it's too much, guys. We're charging more than is out there in the market. And so I just urge caution in coming up with a round number because we think it's valuable property. There is the market will bear concept, and to reduce it a little bit further and to split the middle, I think is going to be a better message to send to industry.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've sort of been popping in and out of the queue, whether I was going to speak or not. But what Mr. Starr just said actually resonates with me, though. I do, at least at this point, like the proposal from Ms. Osiander, but I would ask then if Mr. Starr has an alternative, then to propose an amendment to the motion and to the figure, and we can talk about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other motions? If not, we're going to vote. Bring it up. Please vote. We need one more person. Actually, because we've got 10. Okay. Lock it in, ma'am. The vote's 8-2. That's passed. It is $100,000. Now we need a number put on to line 26 to be refunded to ACS within. We need a number for there. And then on line, that would be about it, I think. Actually, on line 23, within blank business days effective date ordinance. And the other one, Julia, what two dates do we need on those?
Through the chair, I think you would want to check with Mr. Maynard to see how quickly
Mr. Maynard?
HLB can refund that money.
Just give me two numbers that work for everybody.
To the chair, 10 days would be fine.
On both cases? Mr. Maynard, 10 days on both issues, on both blocks?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Somebody make the motion, please.
Move that we say that within 10 business days, the effective date of the ordinance, the party shall amend or finalize any outstanding documentation relating to the easement, and that if ACS has posted payment with the municipality in excess of the fee determined, the overpayment shall be refunded to ACS within 10 business days of the effective date of the ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ask unanimous consent, so you no objection. That's approved. Now on the main issue in front, well, we already did the main issue in front of us. I think the thing's done. That was interesting sausage, wasn't it? Thank you, gentlemen. Now back onto the agenda. We're down to special orders. Are there any? We've done that a couple times. Unfinished agenda, there is none. Audience participation, line 17. Is there anybody that wants to discuss any issue with the Assembly for 3 minutes? Come forward, state your name clearly for the record. And spell your last name, please. Ma'am, you don't have to stand. I don't want somebody to pass out. Just sit down. We'll get you. I promise. We're not crowded.
My name is Phil Isley. Last name spelled I-S-L-E-Y. And greetings, Chairman, Honorable Assembly, Mayor. I saw you on TV the other day about the veto and the mayor's veto on the firemen. And I thought I'd come down and ask you if you had enough votes to override the veto, and if it was done, I have some thoughts for some of the rest of the departments of the city, how they could do fundraising for the Heart Association and the Lung Association and America for Diabetes. And I'm sure that if we're embracing the spirit of having our city employees donate their time and our wages or their wages to support our local charities, I would be more than willing to help coordinate more of them, and so all the departments could be involved and we could cover a lot more charities. So my number is 248-0018, and if you can get the override, I'd be more than happy to coordinate with those charities for you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anybody else wish to talk to the Assembly? Welcome, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Andrea Lang, and I'd like to address the Campbell Creek estuary situation, the conservation area, that right now the city has rejected their commitment to support this. I'm obviously upset about that, and I'm here to invite all the Assembly members. I've talked to several of you about this Campbell Creek estuary walk that we are having on Thursday. And it's being led by Phil Shepard. So if there's any information that you need, knowledge is power. And so if you walk this area, and then you can have your questions answered, and there can be clarification on any kind of conflicting information, that would be great. I've heard a lot of conflicting information myself, and I'm going for clarification as well. So again, I'd like to invite you. That's Thursday. We're meeting at 7 o'clock at the Jewel Lake Cars, and that also includes everybody in the audience. And so I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Andrea?
Ma'am? Mr. Gutierrez has a question.
Did you say 7 a.m.?
7 p.m. Apologies, 7 p.m. No, you don't have to get up that early. 7 a.m. or something. 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else wish to address the Assembly on any issue? Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. My name is Eugenia Horn, and the last name is spelled H-O-R-N-E. And I have a couple of questions because I've been having an adventure with various departments of the municipality and the Anchorage School District. My first question is, if I file a complaint and the ordinance clearly states It shall be done in 240 days, and the investigator takes 503. What remedy do I have? And when I finally got it, it was one of the worst things I have ever seen written. And of course, it was dismissed because it's just an irate employee. The irate employee, the reason it was filed is because I worked for the Anchorage School District and got hepatitis. I now have a major health problem, have basically been told by doctors that I'm less 30 years life expectancy because I will probably have to have a liver transplant. The Anchorage School District also fired me when I was under a doctor's note, taking me off of work and doing tests. Mr. Todd Hess of the Anchorage School District made incorrect, slanderous statements regarding me just to get me fired.
Point of order. If you could not speak about persons that are employees in public, because they don't have a chance to refute it.
Well, I still haven't had a chance to refute it. I have not had due process. I have been cut down by the union. Every investigation, I have not had the right to address my accusers in an impartial hearing.
Ma'am, have you talked with our ombudsman yet? Have you filed a complaint with your ombudsman?
With who?
The ombudsman, the city ombudsman.
The ombudsman said, we don't deal with that.
Yes, they do. They look at the whole school district, the city.
They said, we don't deal with
Talk
that.
to Christy Cada? Did you talk to Christy Cada, our ombudsman?
Yes, I did, twice, 3 times. And the reason I came here is because I've been passed around and I finally am fed up and tired, and I figured, okay, somebody here should know what to do.
Mr. Chairman.
And because it's 3 minutes, I've also would like to submit my medical bills, which I cannot pay because I am not employed, and the city has rejected me for 10 accounting jobs.
Ms. Horn, have you sought legal representation at all? Have you sought any attorney's advice or feeling? I'm being sincere. It sounds like you're in a quagmire. I got you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Horn.
Anybody else wish to address the assembly on any issue?
Hi, everyone. Hello, and my name is Dawn Groth, and I'm a nurse and a member of Bicycle Commuters of Anchorage. And what I come here to talk to you tonight is something that you're going to start to hear a little bit of questioning, and so I thought it would only be fair to inform you a little bit about this. Title IX is Anchorage's traffic code, and there's a specific portion of Title IX, the rewrite, that we want to bring to your attention that you're going to have a lot of people questioning you. There's a brand new code, 9.38.060, that states persons operating a bicycle upon a sidewalk, recreational trail, or bike trail must yield the right-of-way to traffic before crossing a roadway, street, or driveway. And another portion of the new rewrite states a person propelling a vehicle by human power, and human power could be pushing a bicycle or pedaling a bicycle, upon and along a sidewalk, trail, or pathway, or across, except when crossing a roadway or driveway intersecting a sidewalk, trail, or pathway, shall have all the rights and duties applicable to a pedestrian under the same circumstances. These inserts have been made through the Municipal Legal Department, and a special meeting is held. It will be held next Thursday to allow the public to share our comments. But I want you to be aware of what is going to be going down. Bicycle Commuters of Anchorage, which I'm a board member, did some research, and we researched every state in the United States. We could find no state that had similar language to this new code. All states give the right of way to the motorists, give the right of way to the bicyclist over the motorist. According to the bicycle plan that was just passed back here in August, crash statistics for the bicycle versus the car accidents in Anchorage went down by 40% since 2004, when Title IX was originally changed to ensure cyclists have the right of way when crossing a street. I just finished teaching bicycle safety to 60 kids at Campfire program, and this law really makes me nervous. This is dangerous for children. Kids bike 40% more than adults, and it's the leading cause of hospitalizations and fatalities. Children ride their bikes on sidewalks. In this new rewrite, there will be victims on the sidewalk. National statistics indicate 40% of the motorists are driving distracted, and I'm sorry, but I saw that numerous times when I was teaching bicycle safety classes. So many people are talking on the cell phone and texting when they're turning corners. They're not looking. We had a group of 15 kids wearing bright green clothing, and vehicles did not see us. BCA recommends, Bicycle Commuters of Anchorage recommends that the municipality maintains the same language as 2004 in that this reduced crashes, and we start a campaign to educate motorists to stop at stop signs and not roll through them. BCA is doing our part. We are trying to teach the bicyclists. We hold education clinics every 2 months. We've designed a bicycle safety curriculum for kids, and we're hosting a curriculum. We're bringing people up from the lower 48 to teach instructors how to teach people to ride bicycles safely. So we're doing our part. I'd just like to ask you.
Questions for you, ma'am.
Okay.
I know you got a lot more to do. We got a lot.
No, I don't have that much more to say.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not a question for Ms. Groth. Thank you. I've gotten a lot of calls on this. I'm certain that Mr. Honeman, our Public Safety Committee Chair, has this Title IX rewrite's been percolating for well over a year. They originally came to me a little, well, not quite a year ago, when I was still the chair of the Public Safety Committee. So I guess my question is to the administration, when do you foresee this coming to the Assembly at long last?
Through the chair, Mr. Gutierrez, the Title IX Rewrite Committee is still in the process of meeting with stakeholders regarding the changes all through Title IX, not just through the bicycle, the provisions that deal with bicycles, but this provision is the one that's coming up at the next meeting in August. I think that they're looking at something towards the end of the year as they work through the revisions to that document.
Thank you. I think, Assembly members, it would behoove us to pay closer attention. Perhaps I would suggest to the Public Safety Committee Chair that we take this up, because there's a lot of interest out there in this particular part of the Title IX rewrite. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Burt, sir?
Yeah, just as interesting earlier today, I mean, I have been getting a lot of emails on this specific issue. I was kind of wondering where they're, what was kind of promulgating all that communication. But it did cause me to to pay very close attention to bicycle operations I saw during the day. And I noted three that specifically where there's a near car bike interaction. Had one where a biker was going along parallel to the lane and basically biked through the sidewalk and through a no walk sign or a don't stop, so I mean a car might have an expectation that they've got the right of way there. I saw a bike on C Street going from Barnes and Noble, or is it Barnes and Noble? Yeah, Barnes and Noble, right mid-block, basically perpendicular to traffic and halfway between the two crosswalk signs, but going kind of across the walk when there's no traffic there. And then a third incident where there was a guy basically jumped the sidewalk. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to happen, and I commend you and your group and for the effort and the initiative you're taking in making that happen. But I haven't seen anything pop up on Title IX. So I guess I'm kind of at a loss as to what's kind of generated the concern and the proliferation of emails that I've received in my
I think the administration is working on a rewrite to Title IX. And they said it's going, in August?
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don, thank you for coming out this evening. And you mentioned that it was a new law and a new code, but as you know, it's not a new law yet. And I'm pretty familiar with some parts of the Title 9 rewrite, in particular the predator towing section. But like I said, thank you for being proactive and coming out tonight and putting a little bug in the ears of some of my colleagues who were not aware of what's happening, so that by the time it does come before us, hopefully we'll have this issue and others that need to be ironed out, dealt with, and save a little bit of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Johnston?
Well, as someone that commutes by bicycle, I've learned now that I don't make any crossing until I've made eye contact with the driver, because you are correct, particularly turn on right. They just automatically turn and they don't see short people. Anyway, there's been a constituent of mine that continues to bring up bicycle licensing, and I'm wary of it because I have a feeling it's going to be at a great cost for us to go into bicycle licensing. But on the other hand, there is, as we've talked about, there's skin in the game, and there's also accountability with bicycle licensing, such as when Mr. Birch said as far as people not obeying the laws of the road. And I just want that, you might think about that also, or it might take some research. I think a lot of municipalities have dropped it because of cost, but it could be a way of doing bicycle safety.
Thank you, Jennifer. Mr. Honeman?
Well, thank you, and thank you again for all your efforts. I know we did meet on this matter about a month ago or so, and at the time, nothing was on the radar. So when I started getting the interest in the calls and stuff, I did some checking and didn't see it on our agenda, so I was going to get back with you guys on that. But in any event, I was here, Ms. Johnson, when we did have bicycle licensing. It was mandated by the code. It was ran by EPD and administered by an Explorer program that in the public safety section, or the public affairs section. And it went away actually many years ago because of the cost. There's just no one to manage or administer the program. It was a very minimal amount. But in any event, there have been some from the administration side, from the police department, that have done some research on this language of proposed, and I'm trying to dig into the details to find out, because I know you've done some research, and I want to get a chance to hear from both sides and stuff. And we'll have it before the Public Safety Committee, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Ms. Osander?
Mr. Mayor, is there a person in your administration that we could forward, if people contact us about this, who might hear those comments?
You can send them to the municipal manager's office.
Mr. Vacalis. Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. You stirred a lot of conversation up on here.
Oh.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to seeing you.
Yeah. Am I done?
You're done, ma'am. Anybody else wish to discuss something with the Assembly? You've got 3 minutes. Anyone at all? Then we're moving on the agenda. We're now down to Assembly comments. Ms. Osander? Mike?
I'm ready to drive home.
I know you are, and it's a long way from here. Mike?
No comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Paul?
No, sir.
Ernie?
No, sir.
Bill? Jennifer? Elby? Harriet? Let me make a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned.